The guy was fighting a monster, even though his profession wasn't combat-oriented. With a powerful blow, the young man sliced the monster in half, and the massive creature collapsed headless. His companions abandoned him, claiming that a tamer was useless in battle. The guy desperately reached out to them, unwilling to admit that he had become a burden to his friends. The young man woke up in bed and realized it had all been a dream. Fields and mountains were visible outside his window, and soon he was calmly tending to the animals in the yard. Ryu was comforting a calf when a girl thanked him for his help. Thanks to him, her pet had recovered, and the guy modestly replied that he was glad to hear it. The girl smiled and said that a tamer turned out to be useful even on a ranch. Ryu chuckled awkwardly as he hadn't chosen the profession himself, but he still did the work honestly. His friends became a hero and a mage, while the church gave him the profession of a tamer, so he simply accepted his fate and worked on the ranch. The hero candidate learned swordsmanship from knights, and the mage studied spells in the church. From childhood, each followed their own path and supported the other. His friends went off to save the world, quickly gained fame, and became heroes. Compared to them, Ryu felt his own weakness more and more. The girl noticed that Ryu was distracted and reminded him that his friends would soon return to town. The guy smiled awkwardly, gripping his pitchfork. Ryu walked through the forest after work, looking forward to some rest. He recalled his dream about his friends again and couldn't believe they would be back soon. He remembered his childhood when they were always together, but over time his friends moved ahead and he was left alone. Ryu remembered how, as a child, he took care of hunting dogs and played with them thanks to his tamer skills. He even imagined taming Fenrir and going with his friends, but immediately realized it wasn't realistic. A strange noise echoed through the forest and Ryu grew alert. Usually no one came here, so the guy immediately looked towards the sound, trying to figure out who was hiding there. A black wolf with piercing eyes appeared before him. The animal stood calmly, staring directly at him. The guy noted its beauty and strength. He felt that he was facing an unusual creature. Ryu noticed that the beast's paw was caught in a trap. He cautiously approached and said he would remove the trap. The wolf growled but didn't move away. The guy extended his hand to help the animal. When Ryu tried to free the beast, the wolf sharply bit his arm. The guy cried out in pain but still held onto the animal and tried to calm it down. Ryu finally opened the trap and freed the wolf's paw. Then he remembered his healing potion and pulled out the bottle. The guy treated the wolf's wound with the potion and said that everything would be fine now. The animal showed no hostility and Ryu offered it its freedom. The young man decided to return to work, but on the way, he was still thinking about the beast he had saved. That night, Ryu was lying in his room, wondering if the wolf had managed to return to its pack. He wished the beast wouldn't be alone, just like him. At that moment, the wolf did indeed meet other wolves, and Ryu fell asleep after a long day. Suddenly, the same wolf appeared at the window and spoke in a human voice. Ryu was surprised, recognizing the animal he had saved earlier that day. The wolf said it had come to ask a question, and Ryu realized that this was no ordinary beast but a high-level monster. He was astonished that the creature could speak human language, but the young man still agreed to listen to it. Ryu tried to be polite, hoping to avoid danger. The wolf said it would ask its question right away. Its eyes gleamed as it asked why the young man had helped it. The animal expected a direct answer. The wolf reminded him that Ryu had even spent a valuable potion on it. The young man realized that lying could cost him his life and remembered the real reason. He saw himself in the beast. The wolf demanded a quicker answer, and Ryu felt that everything depended on his words. Ryu blurted out that he saved it because it was beautiful. Then he confessed that he simply didn't want such a creature to die. The wolf called him an interesting person and noted that Ryu was different from other humans who had tried to save it. The beast admitted that it liked Ryu and asked his name. The young man introduced himself, and the wolf remarked that the name sounded unusual. The wolf declared that Ryu now belonged to it. To the young man's surprise, the beast explained that it was going to take him home as a pet. The wolf destroyed the building and dragged Ryu along. The young man was scared, noticing that the beast could not only speak but also grow in size. The enormous beast carried Ryu at a furious speed while he complained about what was happening. Finally, they stopped, and after falling off the wolf's back, the young man was surprised to see a bright light and a new place ahead. At the top of the cliff, Ryu saw an entire pack of creatures. Among them, a solitary silhouette stood out against the moon. The young man realized he was facing a pack of Fenrirs. There were about 30 of them, and a huge leader stood in front, which made Ryu fear for his life. The leader demanded that his daughter explain why she had brought a human into their dwelling. She replied that she liked Ryu, but her father became furious. The Fenrir asked Ryu where he had met his daughter. The young man explained that he had saved her on a ranch when she got caught in a trap. The father stated that his daughter could have escaped the human trap herself. Ryu awkwardly replied that she had said otherwise, and the tension eased slightly. The daughter explained that Ryu was a tamer who could provide medical assistance. She hoped he could help their sick elder. The elder Fenrir said that the elder's illness was caused by a lack of magic, and human strength would not be able to save him. Ryu stepped in and said that if he was brought there to save the elder, he was ready to examine him. The pack leader was angered by Ryu's audacity and called him insolent. But the young man insisted that he was brought to help the old man, and although he couldn't cure old age, he would still try. After that, the beast reluctantly allowed him to proceed. The elder lay in his shelter, exhausted and weakened. The young Fenrir introduced Ryu to him, and the young man stepped forward. Ryu stated that he had come to heal the elder but wanted to make a deal. The old Fenrir doubted that a human could help him. The pack leader grew angry and wanted to kill Ryu, believing him to be a deceiver. The young woman stopped her father, and the elder asked the young man if he could truly heal him. Ryu confirmed it and demanded that his wish be granted in return. He said he wanted to become stronger, like the Fenrir's granddaughter. The young man explained that he understood the feeling of helplessness, as the young woman had only turned to him to save a loved one. The elder pondered his words. The elder agreed to the deal, which surprised the pack. He asked what needed to be done, and Ryu began to remove his gloves. Ryu offered the old Fenrir to bite his arm and drink his blood. Despite the pack's doubts, the beast agreed to try. The Fenrir bit Ryu's arm, and a powerful energy surged through his body. The pack watched in astonishment as the elder's strength began to return. Ryu endured the pain, and the elder felt an immense magical power in his blood. The granddaughter admitted that her level was still higher, and Ryu said the situation was complicated. The young man explained that his body couldn't handle the excess magic. If he released the power completely, it could explode, and with age, the magic only increased. Ryu said he was born with an excessive amount of magic but couldn't use it properly. The elder was astonished by his power. The elder's condition improved thanks to Ryu's power. He thanked the young man for saving him and reminded him of their agreement. The elder decided to accept Ryu into the pack, but the Fenrirs protested. They didn't trust the human and feared his power, with one even suggesting they kill him. The elder sharply ordered everyone to be silent, angered by the threats against his savior. The pack immediately quieted down. Ryu asked who the young woman's grandfather was and learned that he was the first Fenrir. The young man understood why he possessed such power. Ryu asked if he could learn to control magic through training. The elder replied that it was possible, but to do so, he would have to surpass human limits. Ryu remembered his comrades and accepted the offer. In return, the elder gave him his fang, and the young man realized it was a priceless item. The Fenrir explained that the fang would help him establish a connection with the pack and train alongside them. Ryu thanked him, while the others watched warily. The elder said that living among the Fenrirs would help Ryu control his excess magic. The young man decided to become stronger and catch up to his loved ones. Intense training with the pack began. After a month, Ryu had noticeably grown stronger and was already confidently fighting monsters. During a fight with a pig-headed demon, Ryu dodged an attack and struck based on Fenrir's prompts. He hit the monster in the arm and leg. When the opponent lost balance, Ryu finished him off with a blow to the neck. After that, he made sure the fight was over. A pile of defeated monsters lay before them. Ryu noticed that he had handled most of them himself, while Fenrir merely smirked. During a break, Ryu mentioned that he could now handle low-level creatures, but he was still far from true strength. Fenrir noted that he was gradually getting stronger. Ryu confidently dodged the monster's attacks, recalling that on the first day of training, he could barely move. A month of training with the Fenrirs had yielded noticeable results. He learned survival in the forest, ran from the Fenrir pack, and ate slightly poisonous berries to build resistance. However, it seemed to him that he was getting used to wildlife rather than becoming stronger. Ryu showed the Fenrir elder's fang and called it his greatest treasure. This item was incredibly sharp and valuable. Fenrir proudly stated that the elder was her grandfather. Ryu understood the importance of protecting her, but blamed himself for insisting on knowing her name. Ryu learned that naming required a part of the soul and immense magical power. The elder had weakened when attempting the ritual, which was why his granddaughter remained nameless. Fenrir asked him not to be sad, as she had done everything to save her grandfather. Ryu replied that the elder would be happier to see her joyful. The pack leader delivered the elder's message to Ryu about further training. The young man set off for the meeting, while the pack watched him with distrust. The elder greeted Ryu and noted that the pack still treated him coldly. He said that the others would soon be forced to acknowledge the human. The elder decided to arrange a trial so that the discontented would see Ryu's strength. Successfully passing it would make him a true member of the clan. The trial was a solo battle against a cockatrice. Ryu was stunned, as this monster was dangerous even for experienced adventurers. The girl asked if she could help, but the elder refused. He explained that Ryu had to pass the trial by himself. Ryu understood the seriousness of the task and prepared to accept the challenge. The pack silently awaited his decision. The elder said that Ryu had not yet mastered the power of the fang. The artifact could channel magic if strength and will were poured into it. Fenrir explained that the true power of the fang would help him easily defeat the cockatrice. The trial was set for sunset, and Ryu was told to rest. As evening approached, the cockatrice appeared in the forest. Ryu and Fenrir watched from cover as the monster turned in their direction. The cockatrice let out a piercing shriek, and the ground trembled from its power. Ryu realized the fight would be far more dangerous than it seemed. The elder had warned about its venomous tail and petrifying gaze. Ryu decided to attack its most vulnerable part first. Ryu targeted the serpent-like tail. He dodged an attack and successfully landed the first blow. Ryu tried to attack from its blind spot, but the cockatrice remained vigilant. Just as the young man prepared to strike, the monster soared into the air. To his horror, Ryu realized the cockatrice could fly. Now, all he could do was wait for the enemy to descend again. The cockatrice attacked with gusts of wind, and Ryu couldn't dodge in time. He was thrown back but managed to get up with difficulty. The attack left a wound on his body, and Ryu understood that the enemy was using magic. His own magic was almost useless in combat, but he remembered the fang. Ryu recalled the elder's words and realized the fang could conduct magical power. He decided to channel his energy into it and take a risk. The young man concentrated his power into the fang, and magic enveloped his body. The wolf was surprised by the surge in his energy. Ryu poured all his strength into the fang and unleashed a powerful strike. A black stream of energy cut through the air and shot towards the cockatrice. The cockatrice watched in horror as the approaching attack, unable to dodge. The blow pierced the cockatrice's body, and the monster began to fall, losing its strength. The cockatrice crashed to the ground, raising a cloud of dust. Ryu realized with surprise that his attack had worked. The wolf announced that the trial was complete and Ryu had succeeded. But after the victory, the young man's strength left him, and he collapsed to the ground. Ryu decided to report to the elder later, but before falling asleep, he noticed a female figure nearby. Ryu's strength completely abandoned him, and he began to lose consciousness. Before drifting off, he heard the stranger's voice wishing him a peaceful rest. The elder acknowledged that Ryu had passed the trial honorably and had become a full member of the pack. Despite his exhaustion, the young man was pleased with his success. After his victory, Ryu found himself at the center of the pack's attention. The wolves began inviting him to play and eat together, showing their acceptance. The mother wolf strictly reprimanded her daughter for her childish behavior. Ryu noticed that in the pack, the elders always maintained order and hierarchy. Aju explained her family tree to Ryu. She showed him her grandfather, grandmother, parents, and herself, emphasizing her connection to the family. Ryu noticed his clothes were worn out and decided to buy new ones in town. The wolf girl suggested he ask the elder for help. The pack was upset, fearing Ryu would reveal their secrets to humans. Aju suggested they ask the elder about his connections with people. The elder suggested they go to a dwarf he knew instead of a human. He explained that dwarves are strong and skilled craftsmen who could make the clothes. Ryu thanked the elder for his help. The elder said his acquaintance lived in the dwarf lands and decided to send his granddaughter with Ryu to keep an eye on him. Aju was outraged at the idea of going with this companion and immediately refused. Her family advised her to be nicer, which greatly puzzled Ryu, and the elder told her to take monster materials to sell and promised to teach the young man a spell for carrying things before their journey to the dwarf lands. Ryu used the storage spell the elder taught him and put away the materials he had gathered. Now all that was left was to head to the dwarf lands, but before that, he asked where Aju and the elder were. The beasts replied that they would appear soon and would definitely surprise him. A girl with cat ears and long hair appeared before the hero. She looked a little embarrassed but confident at the same time. Ryu looked at her in surprise, not expecting such an encounter. The thought flashed through his mind, could this beautiful girl really be standing before him? Ryu was surprised to see a girl with ears and a tail in front of him and immediately realized she was a true beauty. The elder explained that this was his granddaughter who had managed to take on human form to better get along with people. The girl confessed that she had been training for a long time to take on human form, dreaming of going out into the world with Ryu. She used to only be able to hold the form for a short time, but thanks to her mother and grandmother, she was now confident she could go with him. The elder asked the hero to give his granddaughter a name. Ryu was surprised, realizing this meant forming a contract and turning her into a familiar. He was told that the bond would grant special abilities such as telepathy and shared skills. The hero understood that the decision was serious and shouldn't be taken lightly. The wolf reminded him that he owed Ryu his life and therefore entrusted him with this important right. The girl had long dreamed of having her own name and really wanted to receive it from him. The hero agreed to form the contract and prepare for the ritual. They approached each other and confirmed their readiness. The young man focused and spoke the name he chose for her. The girl accepted it and the bond was sealed by magic. The name he gave her was Ruri. The contract was complete and the heroine became his familiar. After the ceremony, Ryu explained that he wanted to choose a simple name. The girl repeated it several times as if getting used to it. He noticed her reaction and wondered if he had done everything correctly. However, Ruri spoke her new name with joy and embarrassment. Ruri thanked him happily, saying everything went well. The elder confirmed their success and looked at them with approval. Ryu agreed and called his companion to set off. She said goodbye to her family and announced the start of their journey. On the way, Ruri asked about the dwarf country. Ryu recalled the elder's words and explained that this nation grew at the foot of mines where they create weapons and armor. She listened carefully and agreed with his words. The travelers continued their journey toward their destination. His companion started to cling to him, which made him feel a bit awkward. He noted that she hadn't been like this in the forest before. Ruri explained that she tried to appear serious in front of her family. Ryu then realized that she was actually very affectionate. They approached the tall stone gates of the dwarf country. He stopped her and asked her to take on her wolf form. He explained that without an identity card, they would arouse suspicion in human form. The girl agreed to his request. Ryu noted that most countries require identification for entry. He said it would be easier to pass through the checkpoint if he presented her as a familiar. Ruri nodded and prepared to use her spell. He watched the process carefully. She dispelled the charm and returned to her wolf form. He confirmed that it would be safer this way. A man approached them and asked if this was the line for inspection. Ryu answered affirmatively and they both joined the line in front of the gates. The traveler asks if this is their first time in Falkrown. Ryu replies that he wants to sell materials and order clothes. His companion notes that the city has many skilled artisans. Then, the next pair is called at the gate, and Mark and Ryu exchange names before parting ways. At the window, the guard asks about the purpose of their visit. The traveler mentions selling trophies and requesting tailoring services. The guard asks about the wolf, confirming it's a familiar. He also inquires if they are registered with the merchant guild. The clerk asks to see the materials. Ryu places the bundle on the counter. The guard carefully inspects the contents and asks him to wait. The traveler agrees and stays by the window. A guard approaches them and politely asks them to come to the post for a discussion. After a short wait, everyone is led into a room with a fireplace. An official informs them that they were detained for a matter that needs to be discussed. The city official states that he wishes to purchase these hides for the country, recognizing the materials as high quality. He offers to arrange the purchase on behalf of the state. The traveler replies that he intended to show them to an acquaintance from the elder first and asks about any potential issues. It turns out the blacksmith he needs is named Dwarf Crown. The traveler says he was introduced to him by an elderly acquaintance and knows a little about him. A special atmosphere in the office makes him assume the master is well known. His companions confirm that he is indeed a prominent figure. Ryu learns that Dwar Crown is the king of this country. The thought that the elder's acquaintance turned out to be the ruler surprises him. He reflects that familiars can communicate with their master through telepathy, but he rarely used it himself. After this, he walks down the street with the wolf, contemplating his next moves. On the street, he is met by the merchant Mark, who notices his lateness and expresses concern. The traveler explains that the material inspection took a long time. His companion sighs in relief and says he was waiting for him. In response, the young man apologizes for the delay. His partner suggests heading to the Adventurers Guild and shows him the way, as the building is very close by. The merchant expresses interest in his companion's materials. They enter the spacious hall together, where adventurers turn in quests. The atmosphere is lively, with conversations and footsteps all around. Inside the guild, his companion explains the layout of the hall and points out 3 registration counters. Separate windows are for orders, for turning in quests, and for buying materials. Since the guest intends to sell hides, he is directed to the purchasing counter. The young man agrees and prepares samples, deciding to show the less valuable trophies first. The traveler places a huge boar hide on the counter. The clerk and other people are immediately surprised by its size and quality. Mark is also astonished and asks where he managed to get such a trophy. One of the clerks guesses that it was extracted using spatial magic. The crowd begins to discuss the value of the loot. The guild employee clarifies that it is the hide of a giant boar, an A-rank monster. His companion considers it just ordinary loot and is surprised by the reaction. They explain that such materials are extremely rare and highly valued. They offer 62 gold for one piece, which would be enough for a comfortable life for a long time. Ryu is handed a pouch with 62 gold coins and asked to count them for confirmation. He awkwardly agrees, realizing it's a huge sum. The crowd around him begins to buzz with excitement. People admire him, call him amazing, and note that with such abilities, he could become a state merchant or even an S-rank adventurer. Ryu was happy that he had become strong enough to obtain valuable monster materials, and Ruri proudly claimed it as her achievement. Clenching the pouch of gold, the young man was pleased with his earnings, but understood that a much more serious task awaited him: meeting the king. At the palace, a guard rushed to Lord Dwar and, falling to his knees, apologized for the noise. He stated that he had urgent, important news to report, after which the ruler calmly demanded an explanation for such a commotion. The guard reported to Lord Dwar that a man had arrived with valuable monster materials, including even the hide of an A-rank monster. Hearing this, the ruler became wary and asked his subordinate how they should proceed. The king makes a decision and orders the stranger to be brought to him the next day. He notes that this person could prove useful. The ruler stares intently, considering the potential benefits. Meanwhile, his companion whispers to the hero that he must not be allowed to leave under any circumstances. The woman hands him folded clothes and informs him that she has washed them. She adds that she also mended the damaged areas, especially around the sleeves. Ryu thanks her and apologizes for even having to use pajamas. His words sound sincere, and his loyal companion stands nearby, observing the conversation. The innkeeper asks, bewildered, how he managed to get his clothes into such a state, admitting that she initially mistook him for either a vagrant or a robber. The young man just smiles awkwardly, trying to hide the truth about his training with Fenrir, while his loyal beast sits calmly beside him. Ryu confirms his promise to the guards to appear at the palace and resolutely clenches his fist, declaring that it's time to act. Ruri calmly reminds him of their goal, and together they head towards the majestic castle, ready to meet the king. Ryu walks down a long corridor lined with knights, escorted to the throne room. The guards warn him to be respectful, and he notes that such a lavish reception seems excessive for an ordinary guy. Ryu enters the throne room and stops before the ruler, who is seated on a raised platform. The king's gaze is heavy and full of power, immediately grabbing his attention. The warrior notes that this dwarf possesses impressive might, comparable to the strongest opponents he has encountered. Although the king isn't on par with the greatest fighters, his level is close to that of top-tier monsters. Ryu respectfully bows before the king and introduces himself as a beast tamer. The ruler tells him to raise his head and says he heard about him from the soldiers the day before. The young man asks if it's possible to have clothes made from the brought hide. However, the king, looking at him intently, unexpectedly asks if he stole this trophy. Ryu calmly replies that he obtained the hide himself. The king narrows his eyes and says he can identify materials even from a distance, asking if the young man truly hunted in the great forest. He scoffs at the tamer, reminding him that the cursed Fenrir lives in those parts. The young man cautiously remarks that he wasn't alone and had a friend who helped him hunt. The king suspiciously questions Ryu about his acquaintances, wondering how they could enter the great forest and return unharmed. He claims that such people would surely have nicknames or be well known. However, Ryu calmly replies that they had no special names as they were merely hunters. Ryu feels that something is off. From the very beginning, the king has been acting as if he's already guilty. The large number of armed soldiers around the throne also makes him uneasy, even though he only came with one beast. Moreover, it's strange that the king, who knew his grandfather, has such a bad opinion of Fenrir. The king offers a deal. He will make clothes for Ryu, but in return, he demands all the monster hides as payment. However, Ryu doesn't agree, as he is still being accused of theft, and he firmly states that he will not give up the hides or cooperate with such a person. Ryu firmly declares that he doesn't trust the king and has no intention of making any deals with him, despite his status. His words provoke outrage among the soldiers, who consider such a disrespectful address to the ruler unacceptable. The king, enraged by the young man's audacious words, immediately orders his arrest and that of his companions. Soldiers surround them, drawing their weapons, and the situation quickly escalates, but Ryu realizes that engaging in an open fight with an entire kingdom is extremely dangerous. Ryu understands that resisting an entire kingdom is futile and decides not to draw his weapon. The king orders him thrown into the dungeon, and the guard, locking him behind bars, merely warns him to behave. Sitting in his cell, Ryu thinks he didn't expect all the hides to be confiscated. He muses that perhaps they should have fought back, but he comforts himself with the thought that the fang remained with him, as it was mistaken for useless junk. Despite this, he realizes it would have been difficult to go against someone who knew his grandfather. As he ponders, his familiar reminds him that they still have the fang, which gives him hope. Ryu notices he's not alone in the cell, and a man addresses him, asking why he was imprisoned. Ryu replies that his crime was his unwillingness to sell monster hides to the king. In response, the man says with a tired smirk that he himself has been arrested again for the same thing, calling it treason. The prisoner explains that his only fault was preventing the dwarves from hunting in the great forest for rare materials, claiming that even a group of dwarves couldn't handle Fenrir. The king, being short-tempered, threw him in prison. Ryu guesses that this is why Fenrir is called cursed, and why the self-proclaimed king demanded the hides. Ryu learns that the one on the throne is not Lord Divar, but his twin brother Dolph, whom no one suspected due to living in the shadows. He locked the true ruler in a protected cell, subjugated the advisors and warriors, and threw loyal people into the dungeon. The prisoner ended up here when he uncovered the deception and the plan to invade the great forest. His companion explained that the cell was protected by a curse that suppressed power, iron doors, and a sturdy cage. Ryu realized that the true king needed to be saved, but the prisoner doubted an escape, as even a dwarf couldn't break such defenses. However, the young man confidently declared that it was possible. The young man struck the bars with a powerful blow. His movement was swift and precise, putting all his strength into it. The iron bars shattered and flew apart from the impact. The hero broke through the barrier, determined to proceed. The iron bars of the cage fell to the floor, and the man sitting inside watched in surprise. A huge wolf with piercing eyes stared ahead, demonstrating its power. The young man stood next to the animal, confidently holding his hands on his hips. Their appearance clearly indicated that together they could overcome any obstacles. The prisoner, surprised, asked about the identity of the newcomers, but the young man introduced himself as a beast Tamer, with his companions standing beside him. The man sat on the cell floor, looking puzzled as his interlocutor extended a hand to him. The stone corridor of the prison stretched into darkness, with massive, cold walls. At the end of the hall stood a heavy, guarded door, behind which Lord Divar was held. The young man noticed 2 guards at the stone cell doors, carefully maintaining order. The prisoner asked if it was possible to free Lord Divar and was told that he would be saved at all costs. The hero stated that he had business with the true king, so his liberation was necessary. He also inquired if his interlocutor was capable of fighting. The prisoner admitted he was a warrior but couldn't fight without a weapon. The hero declared that they would manage on their own, and his task would be to stand guard. The man was surprised by what he heard and raised a hand in protest. At that moment, one of the guards noticed suspicious movement. The hero, along with Ruri, quickly charged at the guards. He told the beast not to kill the enemies but to distract them, while he himself planned to incapacitate them. One of the guards shouted, demanding they stop and threatening to attack, while another asked about the identity of the assailants. A warrior armed with a spear lunged forward, but his attack was intercepted. The hero easily attacked and disarmed one of the guards. He noted that their movements were slower than Fenrir's and other creatures. A guard raised his sword, intending to strike the wolf, but was stopped. The man in the helmet looked at his weapon in confusion, not understanding why it wouldn't move. The young man took advantage of the moment and incapacitated the guard with a kick. He also knocked the second guard to the floor, rendering him unconscious. After the fight, the hero told his companion that the guards were no longer a threat. The man noted that he was surprised by the soldier's weakness, but reminded him that he hadn't stopped training. The trio approached a massive door guarded by 2 more guards. The guy noted that the door was made of strong iron and covered with a curse, making escape from the inside impossible. He observed that the curse didn't affect the outside of the door. The hero struck and destroyed the entrance, scattering debris in all directions. Behind the door, an elderly dwarf with a long beard sat in a cell, cross-legged and with his eyes closed. He was calm and still, as if in deep meditation. His hands rested on his knees and his face showed concentration. The stone masonry of the cell and the ropes on his hands emphasized the severity of his confinement. The dwarf opened his eyes and asked about the identity of the newcomer. The guy introduced himself as Ryu and called himself a simple beast tamer. He clarified whether the person he was speaking to was the king of dwarves named Divar. The prisoner confirmed this and expressed surprise that a beast tamer had managed to reach him. Divar said that the false king had been watching over him. He apologized for his brother and asked for forgiveness on his behalf. Ryu replied that he wasn't to blame. Then he added that there was a question he wanted to discuss. Ryu asked him to make clothes for him. Divar was surprised by his request and asked why he had come to him specifically. The guy explained that the Fenrir chieftain had sent him. He added that the chieftain had spoken of Divar's skill as a master blacksmith. Divar expressed doubt in Ryu's words, claiming that Lord Fenrir couldn't have human acquaintances. He added that he wouldn't tolerate deception. The guy showed a fang he had received from Fenrir as proof. He also introduced Ruri, confirming his connection to the chieftain. Divar was surprised to see Fenrir's transformation magic into human form. Ryu explained that the person before him was the chieftain's granddaughter named Ril. Divar acknowledged the authenticity of the fang and said that no further proof was needed. He apologized for his doubts and agreed to fulfill the hero's request. The hero announced that they were leaving and opened the cage holding the prisoners. He asked the boy how he was feeling, to which the boy thanked him. Divar confirmed that this was the last of his people. Ryu smiled and said that now all they had to do was deal with the self-proclaimed king. Divar said that no one needed to do anything. He admitted that he had been caught off guard last time and had looked pathetic. The king noted that the mess his brother had made needed to be cleaned up. He declared that it was his duty as the elder brother. Ryu said they would go outside and wished him caution. The king confirmed that he would contact them again when everything was over. He explained that there was a secret path at the end of the corridor to the left that they could use to escape. The heroes listened to the instructions and prepared to leave. A crowd gathered around Divar, shouting slogans and calling for the throne to be returned from the impostor. All members of the group moved briskly down the corridor. Ryu turned to Ruri and suggested they return to the inn. She agreed and they headed towards the exit. Ryu and Ruri walked down the stone corridor, checking their path and discussing the left turn at the end. The girl suddenly became alert and said she heard a strange sound, like an animal crying. The young man noted that he wasn't sure but suggested they check the source of the noise. They approached the corner of the corridor, preparing to face potential danger. Ryu and Ruri ran towards the sound and turning the corner, they froze in surprise. A tiny bird, more like a chick, lay on the floor. Both of them, bewildered, wondered if it was even a bird. The small creature looked weakened and defenseless. Ryu and Ruri cautiously approached the small bird, discussing why it was there and why it looked so weak. But unexpectedly, the chick sharply exhaled a stream of fire. While Ryu stood in shock, the bird came to life and began to chirp. Ruri concluded that it wasn't just an animal, but a monster. Ryu tried to calm the chick, which was ruffled and defensive, but noticed that it didn't look injured. Ruri suggested that the bird was hungry as there was no food around. Ryu agreed and they decided to take the chick with them. The chick ate the meat with appetite. Ryu and Ruri watched it and Ryu noticed that the chick was eating too much. After eating, Ryu said that the chick would now be able to survive in the wild and suggested letting it go. However, when Ryu put it on the ground, the chick didn't run away but snuggled up to him. The hero said that he hadn't intended to make the bird a familiar but merely fed it. He noted that the creature had become attached to him and he didn't mind if it stayed nearby. Ruri suggested that the monster would follow him, and the hero added that he would take it in if he wanted to. He suggested they rest at the inn and wait for news from Divar. The hero woke up feeling heavy and tried to figure out why. He noticed he wasn't tired but felt something on his stomach. The young man assumed Ruri had climbed into his bed in her sleep. Rubbing his eyes, he asked her to move over. Curled up in a ball, a chick was sleeping on the hero's stomach. The bird, with its wings and long tail, had settled on him and was peacefully dozing. It lay motionless, completely relaxed. The hero woke up with a start and noticed a large creature peacefully sleeping on his stomach. He was surprised, and Ruri, sitting nearby, asked why he was yelling. The guy said there was something on his stomach, and the girl was surprised to recognize the creature as the chick they found yesterday. The young man noted that he didn't understand how it could have grown so fast. Ruri suggested that the creature might have grown by feeding on Ryu's mana. She explained that there are species that grow by absorbing magical energy. The young man said he didn't understand how monsters worked. The girl added that such rapid development is rare, but this creature might be one of them. There was a knock at the door and someone announced that Ryu was calling the soldiers. The chick got scared and flew out the window. Ryu noted that it had run away and Ruri looked displeased. A girl entered the room and demanded an answer if he wasn't asleep. A soldier delivered a message that the king was summoning Ryu to the palace. The young man and Ruri arrived at the castle and met the king. He thanked Ryu and announced his intention to make clothes and weapons for him. After that, he said he wanted Ryu to hear something and called out to a hidden person. The dwarf spoke Ryu and Ruri's names and addressed Dwarf. The king bowed his head, clasped his hands, and apologized for what had happened. He stated that he deeply regretted the incident. Ryu looked at him in surprise, listening to the apology. Ruri asked why he had pretended to be the king. Ryu noted that the man's aura had changed and he seemed like a different person. The dwarf confessed that he was envious of his brother. He explained that his brother was known as the best craftsman in the country, and because of this, all the orders went to him while he himself wasn't even allowed to touch the materials, which was humiliating for a fellow craftsman. The dwarf confessed that he had tricked his brother into a conversation about rare materials and secretly locked him up. By taking the king's place, he gained power over the soldiers and resources, and he immediately recognized the materials Ryu brought as valuable. He thought he could just pay the Tamer and quickly resolve the issue, but everything went off script. The dwarf admitted that he felt Ryu's distrust and refusal, and his own anger pushed him to a terrible act. Ryu was thanked and offered sincere apologies for what happened, with the added explanation that the mistake was also due to a lack of attention to his brother's feelings. Ryu was asked to accept the apology, and the king also apologized. The man said he had a proposal to resolve the situation. The dwarf suggested that his brother should make Ryu's clothes. The man was surprised and asked what he meant. His brother explained that he considered him a more skilled craftsman and wanted him to make the best outfit. He added that this would be part of his atonement. The king confessed that he had always known about his brother Dwarf's talent as a craftsman, but due to the responsibility for orders, he hadn't allowed him to participate in the work. He realized that he had hurt his pride in doing so. The man admitted his mistake as a brother and understood that if they had worked together and he had recognized his abilities from the beginning, none of this would have happened. The king tasked Dwarf with making an outfit for the hero and confirmed his brother's skill. The hero agreed, stating that he trusted the choice of the country's best craftsman. Dwarf was surprised by such trust but thanked him for the opportunity. The hero noted that a high-quality result was important to him, and he had no objection to this decision. The king said he was counting on Dwarf and asked him to prove his skill through action. The hero agreed and suggested he show everything he was capable of. The king's brother noted that he had always wanted recognition as a master, and now he had his chance. The king emphasized that he believed in him and was confident in his ability. The brothers decided to combine their efforts and create something outstanding. The king extended his hand, offering to begin working together. Dwarf confidently replied that he would take on the task. He promised to make the best outfit not only in the country but in the entire world. The hero noted that the matter was concluded and suggested they get to work. The king apologized for the wait and reminded them of the need to discuss materials. The scenery changed to a view of a house among mountains and plains. The warrior said it had been a long time since their last return home. The female knight apologized for being late, explaining it was due to the attention of the townspeople. The man with glasses reminded her of her popularity and hero status. She expressed hope that Ryu was all right. Her companion suggested they visit Ryu soon, noting that it had been a long time since the three of them last met. The travelers approached the ruined house and looked at it in surprise. The female knight anxiously asked a local resident about Ryu's whereabouts. The man in glasses clarified that it was Ryu's house and asked for an explanation of what had happened. The resident looked confused and didn't know what to say. The man reported that Ryu had disappeared. His companions were surprised to hear this and asked when it happened. The resident explained that it occurred about 2 months ago on a full moon night when a loud noise was heard and they found the house destroyed. When asked about the reason for Ryu's disappearance, he replied that he didn't know, noting that Ryu worked hard and everyone liked him. The residents said that during the inspection of the house, they found animal-like fur inside. At first, they thought it was livestock fur. Later, they decided that Ryu might have been attacked by a monster. The armored girl declared that she was going to search for Ryu. Her comrade reminded her that she was a hero and had a duty. She replied that she would look for him during her travels. The mage noted that they didn't know where to start, to which she responded that was precisely why they needed to search. The girl in armor rode on horseback, vowing to find Ryu no matter what. She was determined not to forgive his demise if it had indeed happened. The scene then shifted, and Ryu sneezed while standing next to Ruri. She asked, surprised, if he had caught a cold. The blacksmith worked in his workshop, striking the glowing metal with his hammer. A young man and a girl with animal ears watched the process alongside another man. The master showed them the result of his work, and they looked surprised and tense. A finished blade was the center of attention. The young man reported that the flame had gone out, explaining that he had raised the temperature to the maximum but couldn't damage the fang. The blacksmith noted that the fang was indeed incredibly durable, as it belonged to Fenrir himself. The man suggested that the flame of a magical beast of the same level would be needed to damage the material. The girl pondered, recalling possible creatures with such power. The girl suggested using the flame of Karura-10. The blacksmith was surprised to hear about the divine bird, and she explained that it was a legendary eagle known for its power to defeat dragons. The young man admitted he hadn't heard of such a creature before, and the girl said it wasn't surprising as it was ancient. The man then asked if the young man was familiar with this bird. The young man was surprised to learn that the chick they found had grown significantly. The girl explained that its growth was due to his magical power, as an ordinary magical creature couldn't change so much overnight. The blacksmith noted that only high-level creatures with a large reserve of magic could do this, and he suggested that the chick was a Garuda. He then asked where the creature was now, and the young man began to answer. The blacksmith surmised that the creature had fled into the mountains behind the castle, judging by the direction it ran. The other man noted that a lot of time had passed, and it was probably far away by now. His companion clarified if they intended to search for it. The bearded man admitted that the Garuda had indeed escaped. The bearded man stated that even if they had to take risks to forge the fang, they must do it. He asked Ryu and Ruri to go search for the Garuda. Ryu agreed, noting that he remembered what the creature looked like. The bearded man added that they couldn't leave the castle unattended for too long. Ryu and Ruri found themselves in a desolate area, looking around for the Garuda. The young man remarked that he wasn't sure if their target was still nearby. The girl expressed doubt about the success of their search. Ryu joked that he had become bait, and his companion suggested that the creature would have flown to them immediately if it had sensed his magic. The pair decided to change their search location and continued through the desolate landscape. Ryu pondered possible places where the Garuda might be hiding. At that moment, Ruri heard a cry and drew attention to the sound. She pointed in the direction it came from. The pair spotted the Garuda, which was being attacked by a large creature. Ryu noted the strange movement of its wings and assumed the bird was injured. He asked Ruri for help. The girl confirmed her readiness to act. Ryu noticed that the Garuda was closer than he expected. The young man speculated that the creature had no parents. The girl was surprised by his words. The bird lay calmly nearby. Ryu explained that the Garuda was fine and only had a scratch. The bird was found alone, so they decided to wait for it to wake up. When the Garuda awoke, Ryu picked it up, but the bird got scared and started flapping its wings. The hero tried to calm it, saying it was safe. The girl suggested making the Garuda the hero's familiar, as the bird had no one else to rely on. The hero decided to ask the Garuda itself first if it agreed to go with them. The hero offered the Garuda to join them, but emphasized that the choice was hers. After a pause, the bird fluttered up and landed on his shoulder. The hero understood that the Garuda had agreed, thanked it, and suggested they immediately come up with a name for it. The girl was delighted by its decision. The king noted that a contract with a Garuda was an extremely rare event and proposed holding a ceremony in the city square. A large crowd gathered in the square. The residents discussed the ceremony, soldiers maintained order, and the hero was surprised by the number of spectators. The king apologized for the crowd's attention, explaining that his appearance always attracted people. The hero decided not to postpone the ceremony and to finish everything quickly. The hero told Garuda he would give her a name to form a familiar contract. He suggested they consider themselves family and began the ritual. The young man pronounced the bird's new name, calling her Karin. After his words, a powerful surge of energy erupted around them, astonishing the witnesses gathered for the ceremony. The bird, now named Karin, found herself at the center of a glowing sphere which surprised everyone present. The young man and the girl watched as the creature began a process of evolution, unique to magical beings. The young man and the girl watched as the creature inside the glowing egg began to evolve, striving to gain the strength and form it desired. The young man excitedly called out to Karin, urging her to emerge. The young man caught the girl as she lost consciousness, holding her tightly, while nearby, the bird flapped its wings. The girl could barely stand, her eyes fixed forward, and the young man supported her, holding her close so she wouldn't fall. The winged girl joyfully rushed to the young man and called him Papa. He asked in surprise if she was all right. Karin explained that she was a little late but managed to take on a human form just like him. The young man realized with a shock that she truly meant him when she called him Papa. The young man asked the winged girl why she had taken human form. He noted that he had a premonition this would happen. She sadly lowered her gaze and said she had been all alone. Karin recounted that she was born in this city but had neither a mother nor friends. She searched for her mother and lived in constant wandering. When people found her, they would scream about a monster appearing and soldiers would begin to hunt her. She added that on the day the young man and his companion saved her, everything changed. She confessed that it was the first time anyone had treated her with kindness and she was very happy. She said she loved them both and, more than anything, wished to become just like them. The people outside anxiously called out to Ryu, asking if he was all right. He calmly replied that he understood the situation and asked Karin to extinguish the surrounding flames, remembering Divar and the others. Ryu returned to the others and announced that everything had gone successfully. When asked about the girl, he explained that it was Garuda who had evolved and taken human form, which surprised everyone present. Ryu asked if there would be any problems with forging the sword, to which he received the answer that if the creature could control flames, then everything would be fine. They then decided to return to the workshop and check, while the soldiers were to explain the situation to the townspeople. The stranger picked up a feather from the ground and looked at it with interest, watching the departing company. He thoughtfully remarked that Ryu was different from other people. A month later, the master demonstrated a leather armor, created, according to him, from the finest materials. He explained that the armor protected against fire and ice attacks and had the effect of neutralizing thermal fluctuations. The master explained that Garuda's feathers had heat resistance and the ability to absorb it, which allowed the armor to protect against both heat and cold. He then showed the finished sword, announcing that the work was complete. The young man admired that the blacksmith was able to forge a sword from Fenrir's fang. The master explained that it was a special type of sword called a wakizashi, with a single-sided sharpening borrowed from Eastern masters to enhance its cutting ability. The girl, in turn, said she had put all her effort into helping her father. The king suggested the young man name the wakizashi sword, created specifically for him. The blacksmith confirmed that usually the master names the weapon, but this time he wanted to entrust that honor to the owner. Ryu pondered a name for the sword, then suggested calling it Wolf. The blacksmith praised the choice and everyone agreed to test the weapon. The crowd below eagerly awaited the sword's demonstration, and Ryu confirmed he was ready to test it in battle. A crowd gathered in the square and the king apologized for the commotion, explaining that it was the only safe place to demonstrate the sword. Soldiers maintained order and guarded the citizens. Ryu confirmed his readiness to begin, and the king solemnly announced the presentation of the new sword, Wolf, forged by him personally. The king ordered Ryu to draw the sword Wolf and unleash all his magical power into the sky to reveal the weapon's true might. Ryu agreed and prepared to act. He considered that even from a safe distance, the impact could be dangerous, so he decided to focus the power on a single point to minimize potential damage. Ryu intently raised the sword and pointed it skyward, releasing a powerful wave of magic. Everyone watched his actions with surprise and tension. A powerful stream of energy cut through the sky, dispersing the clouds and leaving a massive vortex in its wake. Everyone watched the force of the impact in astonishment. The crowd watched the blade's power with admiration, unable to believe what they were seeing. The hero examined the sword in bewilderment, not believing he had managed to cleave the sky itself. His companions noted that the result was worthy of a blade forged from Fenrir's fang. Soon, someone pointed in a direction, noticing something unusual, and the group's attention shifted there. The young man looked up and was astonished to see a massive dragon approaching, obscuring the sky. He recoiled, disbelieving his eyes, and could barely utter a broken "draw, gone." The crowd around him also froze in fear, sensing the power of the creature drawing near. The young man watched in shock as the dragon rapidly approached and landed directly in front of them. The creature heavily set its paw on the ground, kicking up clouds of dust. Everyone around them froze, staring at the massive figure towering over them. 4 people in identical dark cloaks with fur trim approached the scene. A man with a long cloak led the way, his gaze cold and confident. He stopped and addressed the young man named Ryu, noting that they hadn't seen each other in a long time. The young man, surprised, asked how the man knew his name, while Ruru called the newcomer her grandfather. The man smirked, confirming his identity as an elder. Others began discussing the women accompanying him and were surprised to note that Ruru's grandmother looked very young, which made her feel awkward. The king greeted Lord Fenrir and inquired about his well-being, to which Fenrir replied that he was glad to see him in good health. Fenrir then explained that he had come to ask a favor of Ryu and his companions. The elder said he had many questions but suggested putting them aside and moved on to the main point. He explained that a dangerous creature known as the sinister dragon, posing a serious threat, would soon awaken. Fenrir described the dragon as having 3 snake-like heads and a massive, snow-white body. They had once tried to subdue it, but the creature spawned its own kind from its flesh and blood, which led to its sealing. He emphasized that this dragon wielded all types of magic, from ancient to modern, and posed a serious threat. Ryu worriedly thought about how monstrous this dragon was. Fenrir reported that information had been received about the seal's imminent destruction, and they had arrived to prepare for battle. Fenrir asked Ryu and his companions to lend their strength for the upcoming battle against a powerful adversary. Ryu was concerned that their enemy was a dragon, but his teacher assured him that after his training, he was strong and capable of fighting better than most. Ryu agreed to help since it was the elder's request, and the girls supported him, urging him to be more confident. He asked about Dahaka's location, and Fenrir replied that he was in the Dragon Kingdom. The elder explained that the monster seal was in a cave near the Dragon Kingdom and emphasized the need for cooperation with the dragon folk. He urged them not to waste time discussing and to depart immediately, while one of the dragons was surprised that Fenrir was conversing with a human and asked Ryu if he was Fenrir's disciple. Ryu recognized the dragon he had seen earlier and was astonished by its size. Fenrir introduced him as his sworn brother, the Earth Dragon of the Staff, and the dragon greeted Ryu, speaking in human language. Ryu realized in confusion that even relatives of legendary creatures possessed incredible power, and those around him were surprised by his acquaintance with the dragon. The king suggested they depart, and the dragon announced that it would transport them to the Dragon Kingdom. The group hurried to leave to avoid attracting the crowd, and one of the delegation members was surprised that Ryu had named the Garuda child. He noted that such a process usually drained magic to death, but Ryu had managed to form contracts not only with Ruru but also with Garuda, which sparked his genuine interest. An enraged man accused Ryu of stealing his daughter and then cheating on her, threatening to punish him on the spot. The girl tried to calm him down. Ryu's companion noted that Karin had grown very attached to him and Ruru during their time together. Flashbacks showed them eating together, bathing, and Karin constantly being by their side. Ruru explained that she felt like she had finally gained a younger sister. Karin shyly said that she felt safe with Ryu and Ruru. The man noted that despite her strength, she was still a child and it was important for her to have people she could rely on. He suggested they consider them her family, because if she was Ruru's sister, then to all of them she was also like a daughter. Karin smiled, and the others warmly supported his words. Karin smiled, touched, and agreed, accepting the offer of a new family. Later, the dragon informed everyone that they had almost arrived at their destination, and Ryu looked ahead in surprise. Ryu looked down from above, observing the vast city with its streets and buildings spread out at the foot of the mountains. Before him lay a huge city, surrounded by several walls and divided by winding streets where rivers flowed, with mountains visible in the distance. The hero stared in amazement at the castle and the city around it, which belonged to the Dragon King. The dragon explained that the buildings were built to human height because dragonkin are half human. He noted that ordinary dragons have to take human form since space in the Dragon Kingdom is limited. The hero thanked the dragon for his help, and the dragon suggested they move on. A tall man in human form offered to escort them, and the group entered the castle gates, guarded by warriors. The dragon was greeted by the castle guards, who showed him respect. One of the warriors asked about his companions, and the man confirmed that they were his sworn brothers and Fenrir's disciples. Hearing this, the guards were astonished and considered it a good sign, then inquired about the hero's identity. The guards were surprised to learn that Fenrir's disciple was human and expressed doubts about his combat usefulness. The guy just smirked, understanding their reaction. Ruri's father became angry upon hearing doubts about Fenrir's disciple's strength and accused the guards of insult. They quickly tried to justify themselves, but he decided that proof of the disciple's strength would dispel all doubts. The warrior orders the guard commander to be brought, stating that if the disciple defeats him, he can participate in the battle. The opponent appears and prepares for the duel. The spectators support the duelist, and one of the Fenrirs agrees to witness the fight. The opponent assesses him as an ordinary human. The judge announces the conditions. The duel will end if one of the participants loses consciousness or surrenders. The judge signals the start of the fight, and the horned warrior raises his sword, declaring that he cannot afford to lose as a military commander of the Dragon Kingdom. The horned warrior attacks with fast and powerful blows, forcing his opponent to retreat and defend. The guy barely manages to parry the strikes, noting their heaviness. The guy tries to defend against the opponent's fast and powerful attacks, realizing that defense alone is not enough. He understands that he must make his opponent surrender, as he won't be able to knock him out. The guy realizes that he is inferior to his opponent in swordsmanship, so he decides to use magic. He intends to channel power into his blade to find an opportunity for a decisive strike. The guy strikes but releases too much power, causing the opponent to be thrown back with a destructive effect. He realizes that he still doesn't know how to properly control the wolf sword. The fight concludes with the announcement of the guy's victory, and his opponent is checked for his condition after the blow. The girl and the others congratulate him on his success. The elder notes that the opponent has a long name. Ryu is told that the captain holds no grudge, as the fight was by mutual consent and his control over magic has significantly improved. He breathes a sigh of relief. The judge touches the gates and they slowly begin to open with a loud creak. The group watches the process as they are greeted. The heroes pass through the wide-open gates into the Dragon Kingdom, met by massive walls and majestic buildings. A person hidden in the shadows observes them and expresses interest in the newcomer. The man told them to call their boss over, saying Ryu would take him down in 2 seconds. Ryu was surprised and asked, "What?" The guy asked how it came to this, telling Ryu not to even think about losing. The little girl wished her dad good luck, and they decided to discuss the rules first. They agreed that if one side couldn't continue fighting, they would lose. Everyone was in agreement, with no objections. Ryu also agreed, even though he was just a normal human. However, the horned man wasn't going to hold back, telling Ryu to get ready. The referee waved his hand and shouted, "Begin." The horned man drew his weapon and charged into battle. Ryu fended him off, thinking, "Damn, that was tough." His opponent bounced back after the attack. The man kept attacking, asking what was wrong and if Ryu really thought he could face the dark dragon with such strength. Ryu found it hard to fight. His opponent was not only strong but also fast, making it impossible for Ryu to counterattack. But he couldn't give up now. Ryu thought about how to take down his opponent. He realized he needed to use his sword technique. If Ryu attacked using his magical power, he might have a chance. He had to hold back his full strength, and he knew he would do it now. Suddenly, his opponent was thrown against the wall. Even Ryu was surprised by his own attack, thinking, "Damn it, I'm still not used to the wolf's power." The referee raised his hand and stopped the fight, calling out, "Stop, Ryu is the winner." People started to worry about the captain. The man praised Ryu, saying he did a great job. The little girl cheered that her dad won. Ryu asked if everything was okay, and the man assured him it was nothing serious. They had both agreed to the duel and nothing bad would happen to the guy. Ryu breathed a sigh of relief, thanking goodness. It seemed he had become much stronger. The referee opened the gates for all of them. The group stood behind him, ready to go. Beyond the doors lay a large city. They were heading to the Dragon Empire. He hadn't expected their soldier to be defeated so easily. How could this be? Some very interesting individuals had arrived. The man eagerly awaited their meeting. People walked through the city, which was incredibly beautiful. This was the land of dragons, so different from human territories. The girl asked Karin if something had happened, but Karin replied that nothing had. A bow lay in the display window. Did she like that bow? There was still time before the battle, so the group could explore the city. Ryu said, "All right, we can go shopping." The girls exclaimed, "Yes," in unison. First, they absolutely had to meet the emperor. There were many human-like beings there, all carrying stacks of papers. It's clear there are many different races here, not just dragons. Dragons, it seems, are benevolent towards all races. Dragonites are half dragon, half human. After evolving, some dragonites developed lizard-like heads, so that's how it is. Ryu is curious about the Dragon Emperor. He's the strongest dragon in the Empire, much stronger than the man therewith. Is he really that powerful? Anyway, Ryu will understand everything after meeting him. The man asks them to follow him further. They all arrived before the Dragon Emperor, who was seated on his throne. A woman was beside him, and in front of them stood servants guarding the high-ranking individuals. It was immediately clear they were the imperial family. Their aura was vastly different from everyone else's. The man greeted the emperor. He greeted the Earth Dragon. The Empress didn't expect them to find so many strong allies, especially a human capable of defeating the captain of the guards. Ryu felt nervous. The woman had never seen such powerful humans. She was counting on Ryu and asked him to say something. First, they wanted to discuss tactics with the Fenrir family. Rooms had been prepared for the group so they could rest there afterward. The group looked at the emperors, wondering if it was just them, or what about the others, frankly speaking. Only they would participate in the battle. Ryu was astonished by this information. That's right, they used to maintain friendly relations with other races, but now, with the appearance of the hero, those races have refused to provide support. Understood, but there are so few of them. Will everything really be okay? Wait, the hero. Right, Tia became the hero. Maybe they could ask her for help, but it wouldn't work. The current hero perceives all monsters as enemies. She even attacks demi-humans. What? Tia attacks all monsters indiscriminately. The man understands, but in such a situation, the chances of victory are very slim. The emperor apologized. That's right, before their journey, Ryu spoke with Taiga, who seemed to have mentioned this. Is Tia acting strangely? That's an understatement. When they accept a request to kill monsters, her gaze changes beyond recognition. Even he sometimes finds it frightening. What? But Tia used to be such a crybaby. Indeed, does Ryu know what might have happened to her? Nothing. Perhaps the heroic spirit simply predominates within her. If so, that's good, but it's also possible the reason is something else entirely. Why does Tia hate monsters so much? What's with this absurd request? To forge a weapon from Fenrir's fangs, they need the Flame of Guard. If they gather all the materials, the man will create a legendary weapon for them. He heard that the king of this country is a skilled blacksmith. Well, it's to be expected that powerful weapons require appropriate materials, so he can forget about it. But what was the point of them coming here? Tia is a hero and constantly in danger, right? She needs a good weapon. She's from the hero group, Priestess Maria, and he's from the hero group, Knight Gran. First, they'll head to the guild. Maybe they'll find information about the necessary materials there. That's good. It's strange, what's going on? When they mention Fenrir's and Guard, everyone clams up. Maybe something happened in this country. Do the guys want to know about Fenrir's and the legendary bird Guard? A hooded man stood before them. Who could it be? He's an information broker. Why are the heroes interested in Fenrir's and Guard? The king said that if they want the weapon, they need Fenrir's fangs and Guard's flame. He must know something. They'll pay him, so he should tell them. The stranger doesn't want anything from them. Instead, they should listen to a story. About a month ago, a man appeared in this country with a Fenrir and a Guard. He then helped suppress the king's younger brother's rebellion. So now he's a hero of this country. And what? Rumor has it that the hero hates monsters. However, that guy is friends with Fenrir and Guard. It seems this hero will just cut down both Fenrir and Guard. If they give out information about him, this hero will simply kill their hero's allies and he might return for revenge. That's why no one wants to talk. Maybe yes, maybe no. What's the matter? Why is Tia silent? She will definitely kill them. She just can't stand by. Tia thanked him for the information, but she was asked to wait. She will definitely destroy all monsters. Once everything is over, the girl will definitely find Ryu. The guys finally finished. Ryu was very tired. All three of them sat at the table. They didn't decide anything at the meeting. The Dragon Emperor and the Elder continued to discuss battle tactics. Ryu had nothing to do there. The girls suggested they might take a walk around the palace. Everyone agreed and supported the idea. Perhaps they shouldn't just wander around the palace thoughtlessly. They should warn someone first. Ryu recognized the girl. He had already seen this maid next to the Empress. She asked the guy where he was going. The guys just wanted to look around the palace a bit. The maid replied, "All right, please follow me." The girl was happy. Had she been standing in front of the door the whole time? What a strange feeling. This is their dining hall, over here is the library, and that's the training ground. The maid also showed them the imperial garden, and the kids were amazed, exclaiming how beautiful it was. They commented on the beautiful view, and the maid was happy everyone liked it. The princess also really enjoyed it. "The princess?" Ryu repeated, surprised. "Is she here?" The maid replied, "Yes, the young lady is very important to our country." "I see," Ryu said, having just one question. The young man pointed at a pillar, asking, "Who's hiding over there?" A girl's pigtails were visible from behind it. She stepped out and replied, "So Ryu noticed me." The others were surprised to see the girl. "Is that a child?" Perhaps the girl needed something from Ryu. She mumbled something then. She thought of something and said she wanted Ryu's sword. He immediately refused, and an awkward silence fell. The girl, confused, asked why. Ryu replied that such things aren't toys for children. She started to get angry, saying she wasn't a child, and he just mumbled in response. The maid apologized and said she would go call her parents. Ryu said that was fine. The young man knelt down and told her that her parents would be arriving soon. Perhaps she was lost, and they would wait with her. The girl started to get angry, feeling like they were treating her like an idiot. So the girl decided she would take the sword by force. She leaped to grab it but missed as Ryu dodged. "What is she doing?" The girl just wanted to take the sword and demanded he hand it over. Ryu was unyielding. For a child, she moved too fast but also too predictably. The girl demanded he give it to her immediately, but Ryu reiterated that he wouldn't. He asked Lur and Karen to help too. But Ryu was handling it perfectly well on his own. The girl then asked her dad to play with her later too. He was frustrated by the lack of help. The girl started to get angry. How dared Ryu disobey her? She became very upset and clenched her fists. Ryu was surprised. "What, did I make her angry for nothing? Is there anything you want to say before this?" The girl just said, "Take this," and attacked him. The young man immediately dodged, and the girl crashed into the pillar where she had been hiding. Ryu walked over and asked if she was okay. She burst into tears from the pain. "Why can't I win? I'm much stronger than Ryu, so why?" He asked her to calm down and offered to call a doctor. Someone then apologized to Ryu for the wait. The Empress arrived. "What is she doing here?" Ryu asked why the woman was there, wondering if the girl's parents weren't supposed to come instead. The Empress apologized for her daughter's behavior. "Wait, her daughter, so this girl is the woman's daughter, right? And the maid's granddaughter?" Ryu was surprised, her granddaughter too. "So why didn't she stop the girl immediately?" The maid replied that she didn't know how to handle children. "Hold on, so this is the Empress's mother. Then who is the girl's father?" The girl was sitting on the floor, crying. "So this girl is the princess of this country. And this girl is the princess of the Dragon Empire. How can this be?" The guys are very surprised. And Ryu, as always, is at the center of events. The elder arrived. He and Tiamat hadn't seen each other in a long time. "It's nice to meet again. What's going on here?" "I see, so the girl really wanted to take Ryu's sword, but she doesn't think it's her fault. Why is the guy dodging her attacks?" If he had stood still, the girl would have definitely won. They asked the princess to calm down. She lost, so she needs to accept that fact. It seems their daily training needs to be intensified. The maid bowed and apologized to Lord Ryu. "What's this?" The young woman has a request for him. Could Ryu help the princess with her training then? What? Maybe find someone stronger for that. In that case, the girl would be afraid of her opponent. But when the princess is with Ryu, she feels calmer. The emperors also wanted to ask him about this. She is to inherit the throne, so they would like the girl to be ready for it. They are really pleading with the guy. He's not against it, but the man advises him to agree because even the dragons have bowed their heads. Besides, the training won't hurt Ryu himself. Ryu said, "All right, I agree, so please raise your heads." The young woman thanked him, but in return, he wants to be trained as well. Trained? Yes, Ryu would like to prepare for battle as best as possible, and these lessons will clearly benefit the guy. The maid has no objections, and he thanked her. "Then the girls can for now." Here, she said no and that she wants to train too. "What? But that could be dangerous." The girl stood her ground, saying she wants to help her dad. "Karen doesn't want to always stay on the sidelines." Ryu said her name. "Then the man can agree to train her." Karen was delighted and asked, "Really? It's fine. How can he refuse if the young woman asks so earnestly? If she wants to become stronger, the man will gladly help." Or maybe they started whispering. In that case, they can start tomorrow. The man asks, just don't kill Ryu, okay? What? After the maid's attack, the guy was thrown aside. She told Ryu to get up, saying they weren't finished yet. She's just a devil, and the elder is currently busy with Karin. Ryu clearly has some skills, but his movements are too inefficient. He needs to conserve energy. He's getting exhausted too quickly. With his current strength, Ryu definitely can't defeat a dragon. He was thrown aside again after another attack. It's incredibly tough, but Lur and Karin are giving it their all. The young man can't afford to fall behind them. Ryu won't abandon his goal and will definitely become stronger. He was determined, but unfortunately he was sent flying again after another attack. That's enough for today. They're finally done. Now they have to run 100 laps around the training ground. Wait, this isn't the end yet. Starting today, the maid will be in charge of the kids' meals. Everyone sat down at the table, utterly exhausted from the grueling training. No objections are accepted. She'll be right back. They look terrible. Are they even okay? It's hard to tell. It was difficult to endure, and the girl admitted that the human had surprised her greatly. A few days later, it was time for training again. The princess fought Ryu, and he managed to pin her to the ground. The young man was very tired, but the princess, on the other hand, wanted to continue. She was told that her movements were too simple and that she should plan her attacks more carefully. Lord Ryu moves pretty well, but his reaction time is too slow. This might still work against the princess. However, if the enemy moves much faster, Ryu will be in trouble. He needs to always pay close attention to his opponent's movements, even though she says that the maid thinks it's all quite simple. The young man just needs to feel the opponent's mana, the maid explained to Ryu. Where the mana is directed, when to attack and when to retreat. With this, they will understand the combat situation much better. By reading it, Ryu will know where the opponent will attack. She understood that it would be difficult to grasp verbally. When Ryu encountered a strong opponent, did he feel intense pressure? At that moment, he understood everything. That's good. Ryu already knows what that feeling is like. In that case, he should solidify it in a real battle. Suddenly, an awkward situation arose. What was she doing? He told her to stop, and Ryu even closed his eyes. What's happening? The maid suddenly transformed into a dragon. From this moment on, Ryu will fight against this form. The dragon asks him to defeat her, and Ryu can use any weapon he wants. The mistress will also participate in the battle, but Ryu can only attack her after dodging the princess's attack. Isn't that a bit too harsh? The guy can only blame himself since he chose the maid as his teacher. Ryu was informed that the real training would only begin now. He should get ready. The fight is starting, and the dragon has already swung her tail. What's the matter? The dark dragon's attacks will be many times stronger, and Ryu knows it himself. He shouldn't forget about the princess either, as she just attacked him. So what should Ryu do now? He has no choice but to dodge. If he tries to get closer, he'll be attacked immediately. It's not allowed to think during a fight. Has Ryu forgotten what they talked about? He needs to feel the mana. The guy won't win by relying only on his sight. The battle was very tough for Ryu. He stood on the battlefield, holding his weapon, beaten and exhausted, staring at his opponent. Is this Ryu's limit? She admits that for a human, he showed a pretty good result. The man wanted to say something to Tamed. Perhaps Ryu is that person, but for now, she doesn't see anything special in him. Maybe the elder was mistaken. Ryu was determined to fight. The man watched all of this, thinking it was worth a try. Is that all this person can do? Excellent, this is a chance for the princess. Maybe she should just kill Ryu. The girl asked what was wrong. In his current state, Ryu would die at the hands of the dark dragon anyway. The dragon said she could kill Ryu without causing him unnecessary suffering. He sat on the ground, leaning against it. This is the end. The dragon swung at Ryu. The girl cried out for her to wait, but why? The guy wanted so badly to catch up with his friends, but everything he did turned out to be in vain. He wouldn't accept this. The fight continued, and a thick smoke rose, covering everything around them. Ryu understood everything. For just a moment, he saw the trajectory of the blow using mana and managed to dodge in time. Can he now feel his opponent? The maid congratulated the guy on his success. Tamed asked him how he liked the game. She hoped he didn't believe he was actually going to be killed. Oh, thank goodness, although it couldn't be said that it was all just a game. However, he successfully passed Tiamat's trial. She told him to accept her congratulations, and Ryu thanked the girl. The princess started complaining, asking why she was the only one who didn't know anything. She wanted to continue until she also passed the test. She shouldn't be so selfish and should stop whining, but wait, didn't the girl pass the test already? It seems she did hit the guy after all. Her task was to hit Ryu, right? Technically, that's what happened. Tamed agreed and said, all right, the mistress passed too. The princess was overjoyed, asking, is that really true? She was very happy. Ryu praised the girl and the princess giggled, saying, of course I passed since you did too. The girl said it was amazing and now they could go eat. He noticed Lur and Karen. He never thought they would be drinking together like this again. There were times when they couldn't even talk peacefully for a minute. Tiamat laughed, saying, yeah, but at least we always had something to do. The man asked how the training was going. Everything's great, Ryu is making progress. He never thought Tiamat would ever praise a human. The girl couldn't even imagine she'd be training a human. The time will come when the guy surpasses both of them. That's entirely possible. She's glad the mistress is also following Ryu's example. He wondered if they could marry the princess to Sir Ryu. The man was very surprised. He choked on his drink at those words and asked, Tiamat, are you drunk? Marry a dragon princess to a human? That can't be. Of course, it won't be easy, but it's not impossible. If Ryu becomes stronger than us, others will acknowledge him too. Besides, as he said, Sir Ryu is that very person. The man thought for a moment, then said, you're right. He must have had a hand in it. Today, Tiamat herself saw the guy's power. An ordinary human couldn't possess such strength, it's astonishing. But why Ryu specifically? Many have already tried to obtain his power through a contract, yet each of them died a horrible death. The choice will be his. If he finds out about Ryu, they'll have a lot of problems, because the guy gained a power no one else has been able to master yet. Could anyone else be aware? It seems not, since he disappeared many years ago. So how did he meet Ryu? He can tell them, of course. Ryu has a hidden power, and the man will definitely tell them about it when the time comes. The guy continued his training with Mistress Tiamat. They fought and Ryu attacked the girl, and the master became much stronger. It's true, his skills have clearly improved. The girl is amazed by Ryu's rapid development. Excellent, he's already reaping the rewards of his hard training. Perhaps the guy might even be able to damage the dark dragon. Therefore, there will be no training tomorrow. This surprised Ryu, and he asked, what? He trains every day and Ryu's body is very tired. Rest is also part of training. The girl will inform the elder. Why doesn't the guy go for a walk with Karen and Lur? Ryu replied, okay. By the way, the three of them never did get to walk around the city. Maybe they could go sightsee. Someone called the guy. He was asleep and didn't understand who it was. Ryu opened his eyes and realized it was Lee. The girl with the ears approached the bed and started waking Ryu. He fully woke up and opened his eyes. It was actually Lur who said that Karen was already waiting and that the guy should get dressed faster. Ryu had promised that they would go for a walk today, and everyone was already getting ready. The guy asked the girls where they could go. Everyone started thinking. Karen hummed and Lur didn't know the city. By the way, Karen was looking at ribbons earlier. They could go to that very shop. The girl was delighted, saying it was a great idea, and everyone agreed. The princess is here too, of course. Since the guys don't know anything here, the girl will show them everything. They should be grateful. Ryu didn't think he'd go for a walk with the lady. What, take the princess with them? Yes, Tiamat was asked to participate in the meeting, and there's no one to look after the princess. What about the other servants? Unfortunately, they are not capable of restraining her wild temper. She was sure Ryu could handle her, she said. If anything happened, the guy would definitely be in trouble. The princess called everyone to follow her. They were welcomed and asked what the lady desired. The princess's friends wanted to buy jewelry, so she brought them here. Wow, the merchandise sparkles so much, and there's so much of it. Maybe the guys want to look together. The girl was very embarrassed. She's a princess, she already has everything. Well, girls like jewelry, right? Can I ask something? Why does Ryu want to become stronger? The princess is very interested in this question. The guy remained silent and looked at her. This question was very unexpected, just answer it. Well, Ryu wanted to be on par with his friends. They both received rare combat professions. However, Ryu wasn't as lucky and he fell behind. Therefore, he wants to be stronger. So Ryu wanted power because he has an unsuccessful profession. And what is it? The guy's profession is mentor. What, just mentor? So the princess lost to a regular instructor, but Ryu had trained a lot and only gained his strength thanks to Lur. If he hadn't met Lur, he would have remained a simple shepherd and never seen other countries. Wait, other countries. The girl became curious about where Ryu had been and what the people there were like and if they had fun. Well, the guy hadn't traveled much and had only been to one country. But she's a princess, shouldn't a girl travel a lot? No, she's never left the empire and since she's a princess, she can't just leave the country. The girl is like a bird in a cage here. Ryu understands her. What? What does that mean? Is he also from a royal family? Why does he find it easy to understand her? Ryu was exactly like the princess. The guy had never left his village and learned everything from his friends. But what about him? Ryu was envious of how freely they could travel, and when they brought back souvenirs, it only intensified his jealousy. The princess must be feeling the same way right now, right? The girl was very surprised and wanted to say something. That's right, her parents and grandmother always look after her, but even protection has its limits. She really wants to see the world. She wants to see every country in the world. She wants to find a place no one has ever seen and receive praise from others, meet different people, try different foods, and also find friends. The girl can certainly manage on her own, but so that's how she was trying to make friends with the kids when the princess was hiding behind the pillar. Karin has already chosen. How cute, right? By the way, what were the kids talking about? Oh, nothing special. Ryu said that the princess wants to be friends with them. She was indignant. Oh, him, who gave him permission to speak so directly? Well, what about it? Karin asked if they weren't already friends. This question shocked the princess. What is she saying? What is Karin talking about? Well, how to put it, they eat together and train together. Doesn't that mean they're friends? The princess said, of course not. She, her dad, and her little sister are family, but Karin would be happy to make friends. She asked if the princess wanted to be friends with her. Ryu would also be happy if they all became friends. Lur also has few friends, so she agrees too. Okay, the princess agrees. Now they are all friends. The kids can even call her by her first name. Then Aoka can also choose a ribbon. What? A ribbon? But she already has one. Karin pulled the girl and said, let's go. This will be proof of their friendship, right? That's what friends do, isn't it? Looks like the girls are having fun. Yeah, it's great that they became friends so quickly. Didn't Lur buy anything? They have money from selling materials, so she shouldn't be shy. Maybe she'll pick out this necklace. These chains look like a collar and she doesn't like them. Besides, she'll be making decisions in battle, so Ryu wants to treat the girl. How about this? It's a scarf. If it's uncomfortable to wear around her neck, she can tie it around her arm. Plus, it goes well with her black hair. But if he doesn't like it, they can look for something else. It's all good. Lur smiled and thanked Ryu. The guys were thanked for their purchase. Where to next? What other popular stores are there? They should follow Aoka. The princess is sure they'll like it. What happened? A dragon was flying in the sky. It's Tiamat finally found them. Something happened. She reported that they were in trouble. The seal in the dark dragon's cave has weakened too much. It looks like it will break free sooner than they expected. According to preliminary forecasts, it will break free today, so they should prepare thoroughly. What, it's starting already? This is too sudden, but there's no other way. The guy asked Lady Tiamat if he could see the seal. Of course, that's why she was looking for him. They must now return to the castle. From there, they can all go to the cave together. Freedom will come soon, and all desires will be fulfilled. Lur said it looks like the hour has come. Yes, and Ryu remained silent. The guy asked if Lady Tiamat had ever fought the dark dragon before. The girl was young back then, so she couldn't fight, but her relatives could, and he is very strong. Even for Tiamat, he is a formidable opponent. Can Ryu really handle it? Tiamat was silent at first, but then told the guy not to bother his head with unnecessary thoughts. Even if he isn't human, Ryu isn't weak. The guy has achieved a lot in this time. If he can't believe in himself, then he should believe in her. The guy needs to believe in himself. He is strong after all. Ryu listened carefully. He enthusiastically replied yes. Aoka will also try her best, but he can't let him hog all the glory, and the guy doesn't even want that. The man asked about the situation. He realized the emperor had arrived. Who are all these people? These are the spellcasters of their empire. They are fueling the seal with magic to make it last longer. The seal won't hold much longer. The dragon will awaken in a few minutes. Understood, they'll handle the rest. Something bad was starting to happen. What? The seal. The emperor ordered everyone to evacuate immediately. The dragon was about to break free. The guys watched to see what would happen. He had waited so long for this day to come. An enormous three-headed monster with very sharp teeth appeared before everyone, and they were all standing close to each other. Someone scoffed, dragonites, Fenrirs, and even a human. Is this guy really the hero? Ryu asked what and protested that he wasn't a hero. The emperor extended his hand and told them to prepare for battle, warning them not to let their guard down. These annoying insects were completely uninteresting. The dragon was furious and lunged at them, extending a paw from which a magic circle formed. He told them to get lost, and everyone immediately panicked. What is this? Oh hell! An order was given for everyone to retreat immediately. Ryu couldn't understand anything. They vanished. Auka screamed, calling for her father and mother. They're not here. Where did that monster send them? The dragon replied that he had simply transported them to another dimension, wanting to fight them. Then the dragon looked at Ryu and said, "You're this boy's group, aren't you? Come on, entertain the monster." He began to glare menacingly at the people. They started trying to break through the wall. Damn it, we can't get through. Someone in wolf form was very frustrated by the situation. It looks like this space was created by the dragon's magic. It's such powerful magic. What are we going to do about this? But they needed to hurry because Lur and the man said there was no need to rush. They had trained a lot specifically for this day, and he was confident in the guys they would manage. Now they needed to figure out how to get out of here. A girl shouted, "Look out!" Suddenly, a black snake leaped out of nowhere at the man. There were also those snakes on the floor. What are these creatures of darkness? The people were surrounded by a bunch of black snakes. They stood side by side, covering their comrades' backs. Damn it, he didn't waste any time. There are too many of them. The dragon attacked again. A circle reappeared in front of its paw, which the monster used to attack with magic. Ryu dodged, and the dragon asked, "What?" He dodged again. "Stop running and attack already." The young man replied, "You don't have to ask twice." Ryu went on the offensive and wounded the dragon. It didn't dodge. No, rather, the monster deliberately exposed itself to the attack. How could that be? Tiamat advised him to be careful, warning that the dragon could summon creatures of darkness from its blood. She told him not to even think about attacking recklessly, or he would be at a disadvantage. Ryu clicked his tongue, realizing what she meant, as the black snake that surrounded everyone attacked him. The girl took a fighting stance, and the monster had become much stronger than before. With a scratch on its arm, it was even capable of summoning creatures of darkness. If they didn't kill the dragon in one blow, the guys would simply be overwhelmed by numbers and all perish. She looked at Ryu, who held a weapon in his hands, and realized that they had his strength. The young man was very focused. The dragon used magic again, asking them, "How about another attack?" But Ryu replied, smiling, "As long as we're together." The three-headed monster with black wings on its back and a long tail created many more magic circles around itself. They were simply everywhere. All four of them watched this, utterly astonished. The dragon used magic once more, and a thick smoke billowed from it. The kids couldn't possibly dodge such an attack. The monster had only just awakened, so where did it get so much power? He asked what was going on. Weren't they here to kill the monster? The dragon spread its black wings and extended its arms. Ryu just stood before him, contemplating. If he did nothing, everyone would die, but if he attacked, he would only increase the number of darkness creatures. What should they do? They needed to act. Tiamat stood behind the young man and advised him not to rush. He turned to her. She told Ryu to think carefully about a plan and to do what he was capable of. Then she became lost in thought. Although Ryu and the others had grown stronger after grueling training, they still lacked combat experience. It would be very difficult. Tiamat hoped that the emperor and the other people would manage to return. After much deliberation, the girl took a battle stance, spreading her legs. Until then, she had to protect the kids. Tiamat had a lot of combat experience, much more than them. She snorted, saying they just needed to kill the monster with one powerful blow. At this, the princess put her hand to her chest and enthusiastically declared that she could handle it. She would simply kill the monster before it could activate its spells, but the girl called out to Auka, telling her not to rush. She transformed into a similar monster with horns and wide wings on her back. Ryu was surprised when he saw the girl. Was this her dragon form? The dragon princess approached her opponent and they stood facing each other. Auka told him that the dragon was finished. The monster looked at her, extended a hand around which a magic circle appeared, and said that such an act was foolish. Auka stared directly at him. The paw was close. The dragon used its powers, employing silent magic. The kids panicked and called out to the girl. An explosion occurred. Auka covered her snout with her paws from the smoke, then suddenly saw something that shocked her. Another dragon lay before the princess, wounded and beaten. The young man also saw Tiamat in her dragon form lying on the ground, and he cried out her name. Everyone was worried about her. A shiver ran through Auka's body. Tiamat had sacrificed herself for others, but the monster considered such an act foolish. Then he flung Tiamat away with his tail and said, "Get lost, you trash!" The princess began to worry about her grandmother. She just lay there all beaten up. Auka immediately flew to her and said, "Grandma, hang in there." She just lay there and faintly said that Tiamat couldn't move. Was it some kind of paralysis magic? Damn, if the girl didn't get up, it would be very bad, and they all called themselves heroes. The three-headed dragon continued, saying the previous hero was much better than them. Then he opened his maw wide. "Come on, try to entertain this monster," he pleaded. Everyone stared directly at him. The atmosphere was tense. Another black snake lunged at them. Someone in wolf form pinned it with a paw. Damn, they kept coming. There was no end to them. There were too many snakes. 3 wolves stood side by side, covering their comrades, surrounded by a pack of snakes that crawled closer and closer. Things were bad. They had lingered too long. The wolf pondered the situation. They needed to hurry to Ryu and the others. They urgently needed to come up with something before it was too late. The black snakes attacked the wolves more and more, and they fought back as best they could. Another black snake lunged at one of the wolves, ready to attack. The man asked Ryu to hold on a little longer, worried about the young man. The three-headed monster stood directly before Ryu and said, more, let them attack him." Behind the young man, the princess sat next to her wounded grandmother, who lay on the ground. Auka begged her to hold on a little longer. Tiamat slightly opened her eyes and looked at her granddaughter. The monster enjoyed what was happening, his face clearly pleased with his power. Perhaps if he removed the obstacles, Ryu would become much more serious. The young man was scared, starting to worry about Auka and Tiamat. The princess turned at the voice, then pressed herself against her grandmother and closed her eyes. Then the princess opened her eyes. The smoke around them began to clear. Standing before her and Tiamat were Ryu, holding a weapon, and someone in wolf form. Auka looked at them. The young man asked the girl to calm down and not worry. The guy turned to Auka and told her to remember why she was there. He reminded her that her grandmother had been hurt because of her, and if she died, Tiamat would cry, as all her attempts to protect the princess would have been in vain. The girl listened to Ryu's words. He continued, saying that all hope rested on them now, which was why Tiamat had protected them with all her might. Ryu smiled broadly at the princess and told her, "Let's fight together." Her eyes sparkled and Auka looked determined. Tiamat lay on the ground in her dragon form, still unable to move. Then Auka told her grandmother not to worry. Tiamat opened her eyes slightly and listened to the princess. Auka, with her back to Tiamat, promised she wouldn't do anything reckless again. The group stood side by side, ready for battle. Now they would fight together, protecting each other, with Ryu standing in front. The three-headed monster responded, "Good." It was amused by their pathetic attempts to defend themselves. With a malicious look, it challenged them to show what they were capable of. It extended its paw and conjured more magic around itself. The team charged at the monster. Ryu drew his weapon and dodged the enemy's attacks, then Karin also used magic against the three-headed dragon. The monster asked if she really intended to attack a dragon with fire, then said it needed to get rid of her first. The girl flew into the air, long shadows trailing behind her. The guy worried for Karin as she dodged the dragon's attacks. The shadow eventually grabbed the girl's leg. The wolf bit off a piece of the shadow, then asked if Karin was okay. She replied yes and thanked her sister. The monster said, "Let's try," but the princess jumped in and declared she wouldn't allow it. Ryu attacked the monster, which blocked with its paw and retaliated with magic, declaring it was all useless. The enemy then threw both of them away. The guy and Auka landed, but the question was, what now? Tiamat had warned them to dodge the enemy's spells at all costs. Simple attacks wouldn't wound it. The monster was too strong, and from its wounds it would summon creatures of darkness. How could the team defeat such a monster? They needed to remember their training, everything Tiamat and that man had taught them. The three-headed dragon must have a weakness. The guy pondered this. Maybe if they used magic reading, it would work out. The guy carefully observed the dragon's movements. It couldn't be, but if it was true, they charged at the monster. Ryu stood still, then grabbed a feather that was flying nearby. With no other choice, he turned to Lur and Karin and wanted to ask them a question. They listened to Ryu and asked, "What if it doesn't work? What then? Does the guy even realize how dangerous this is?" Ryu was determined and confident that together they would definitely succeed. Even if something happened, he believed the girls could protect him. They both looked at Ryu and listened. He said he believed in them, and that was precisely why he wanted to try. The wolf stood on its paws and leaned forward slightly, ready for battle. Lur understood everything. Now they would do it. Karin also wanted to try her best. The princess also replied that she would try. Ryu turned to Auka and said, "Listen." The monster saw them talking and asked if they were planning something, thinking he would allow it. But no, it used magic again and another circle appeared. Suddenly, the wolf pounced on the monster, disrupting the three-headed dragon's spell. The enemy clearly hadn't expected that. It rudely called the wolf a fast mutt. The monster was displeased at being interrupted, but there was no way to dodge in midair. The dragon aimed its paw at the wolf and something began to happen. They completely obscured his view with guards' flames, making the monster think they were idiots and playing right into his hands. The monster was ready to attack, but then Auka appeared, flying straight towards the three-headed dragon. Auka flew up to the monster and attacked. Why didn't guards' flames work? Only bones should have been left of the girl. The princess had a feather in her mouth, clenching it between her teeth. Ryu pulled out a feather and told the princess to take Karin's feather, explaining that with it, Auka wouldn't take fire damage. He had already protected the feather, so there was nothing to worry about now. This three-headed dragon's magic is incredibly powerful, but they just need to prevent him from activating it. Ryu was deep in thought, realizing the source of the magic. The monster, intrigued, wondered if these idiots were really going to attack him again. The three-headed dragon began casting another spell, creating a magic circle. He intended to send Auka to her grandmother, but the girl retorted that he was the only idiot here. A wolf attacked the enemy and a part of the monster's body was simply severed. Ryu explained that the source of his magic was his tail, which is why they needed to attack him there. So that's it. It turns out the kids had planned this all along. Now everything made sense. Did they really think they could strip this dragon of its magic? Dark snakes reappeared from the blood and went on the offensive. The monster declared that his creations, which he always used against them, would deal with them. The three-headed monster opened its maw wide and urged them to entertain their opponent further. The kids looked at him and decided to attack together. The dragon continued to speak, demanding more, wanting the battle to be fought to their limits. This was exactly what the three-headed dragon desired, but then something happened and he froze. The monster looked around and realized someone was missing. This was strange, only 3 girls had been attacking him. Then the monster realized the hero himself wasn't there. The dragon began searching for Ryu, wondering if he was planning something against his opponent. He then demanded to know where he was, telling the hero to show himself already. Suddenly, Ryu leaped out with a knife in hand and told the monster he was right there. The young man flew towards the three-headed monster. The battle continued, and everyone was clearly determined to win. The young man tightly gripped the blade, and Ryu's magic coursed through it. He had imbued his weapon with a spell. All this time, Ryu had been accumulating magical power. The monster only just realized his opponent's strategy. This was it. This was undoubtedly what the dragon had been looking for, a true hero. Ryu fiercely attacked his opponent, shouting, "Take this!" He was resolute and had no intention of retreating. The weapon drew closer to the dragon. Something happened, and a massive amount of smoke filled the air. The battle was in full swing. The girls noticed something was wrong. The smoke made it impossible to see what was happening. Everyone closed their eyes to prevent anything from getting into them. The smoke from the battle began to clear, revealing the three-headed dragon lying on the ground, defeated and badly beaten. Its heads were also on the ground, not raised. The hero had accomplished his mission. Everyone looked in that direction, waiting to see what had happened. Had they won? Ryu stood on his feet, weapon in hand, then noticed his opponent, who was already down after his attack. The team started celebrating. They had all worked together to defeat the terrifying three-headed dragon and developed a strategy to do it. They succeeded. The guys had vanquished the monster. Auka told her grandmother she would help her now, but the young man turned around. Something had happened. The three-headed monster was still lying on the ground, but it could speak. It praised the young man for his powerful strike, calling it incredible strength. Even he, the fearsome dragon, had been defeated by Ryu. The young man lowered his weapon and listened. The dragon asked what he wanted as a reward for his efforts. Right, Ryu was a hero, and it seemed his knowledge of magic would be perfect. Was he not going to fight anymore? Ryu replied that he hadn't fought him for a reward. He told the monster to answer what goal it had pursued, why it had wanted to fight the hero so badly. The monster had simply wanted to fight a strong opponent, nothing more, and that's what happened. Now he lay defeated, with the hero who had attacked the three-headed dragon standing beside him. The monster wanted to know how strong it was, and for that, it absolutely needed a worthy opponent. Fortunately, people came here in droves, so the dragon always had adversaries. Everyone wanted to fight it. However, no one had ever been able to stand against this monster. Then the three-headed monster realized that only a hero could fight it. Only a hero was capable of defeating such a powerful opponent. Yet absolutely everyone began to fear this monster, even those who called themselves heroes. No one could handle such a strong adversary, so they decided to seal it away for the safety of others. The defeated dragon lay there, explaining that it simply wanted to find someone who could match its strength. All the young people approached it closer. Being born with great power was a true curse. They had become much stronger, so they were embarking on a journey. Their mentor couldn't fight, so the young man had to stay in the village. They said goodbye to Ryu, telling him to take care of the animals in the village. Was he lonely? Then the three-headed dragon asked the young man what was wrong and to say what he wanted. If Ryu couldn't think of anything, the monster asked him to just finish him off, but the young man made a decision. The young man smiled broadly and told the dark dragon that they should be friends. This was Ryu's wish. Everyone was incredibly surprised by what they heard. How could that be? What kind of wish was that? The wolf even asked Ryu what he was talking about. The three-headed dragon asked what the young man meant by those words. He was still lying on the ground, trying to understand the hero who had defeated him. He replied that he understood his opponent like no other because despite possessing great power, the three-headed dark dragon had remained alone. The girls listened, and Lur spoke his name. Ryu continued speaking, saying that since they had defeated him, the young man approached his defeated opponent and explained that now they were equals. Therefore, they could now be friends. Ryu extended his hand to him. Then he smiled broadly and asked if the monster would grant his wish. The three-headed dark dragon wanted to say something, but a girl standing behind him said she was against it. The princess was angry and said that he had killed so many people and also wounded her grandmother. Now she was lying there, unable to move. Aoka wasn't going to be friends with such a creature. If they forgave such a monster, it might start killing again. Ryu replied that after he listened to the dark dragon's story, the young man understood that the monster wasn't going to kill anyone anymore. But then, Aoka's grandmother suddenly called out to her. Tiamat stood up now in her dragon form and said that when the young people defeated the monster, the paralysis spell also broke. Aoka turned towards her and cried out, "Grandma," then rushed to hug her. In the world of monsters, only the strongest survive. The relatives sat close, hugging each other, and Tiamat kept talking, leaving the choice up to Ryu. He had to decide what to do next. Ryu then said that if the dark dragon ever turned evil again, they could easily defeat him once more. If they managed it now, they could certainly do it again. He was confident and serious in his words. He continued, saying the team might not trust the dark dragon himself, but surely Aoka trusted Ryu. The princess pondered this, recalling all the moments she had shared with him. Aoka made her decision, saying, "All right, but just this once. If anything happens, it'll be on your conscience, Ryu." He thanked her for trusting him. He then approached the dark dragon and asked, "So, what's your answer, monster?" The dragon chuckled slightly, its head still resting weakly on the ground, and said Ryu's wish was very strange. After that, he finally agreed, asking to be allowed to heal Ryu. He activated magic in his paw, then directed it towards his former opponent and now friend. Ryu took the glowing orb from the dark dragon's paws, staring at the spell as if mesmerized. Something was happening. Then he asked, "What was that?" The monster replied that he had placed a piece of his soul inside Ryu. Smoke rose and a voice echoed, "See you soon, hero." Ryu didn't understand what had happened. The monster had just vanished. Then suddenly Ryu collapsed. The girls worried about him, and the wolf ran to his comrade. How could this have happened? Suddenly, darkness fell and bright lights shone. The young man lay in the darkness, then realized he was on someone's lap. He sat up and asked where he was. Had Ryu lost consciousness? He had finally woken up. A girl with long black hair sat before him. Ryu recognized her. She sat on the ground with her legs tucked under her, smiling modestly back at him. They both stood up. Ryu said they hadn't seen each other in a long time. She had already woken up, meaning she had recovered. That was true, but she could only talk to him in this world. She thought Ryu was too reckless and he felt awkward at her words. She continued, saying that in his battle with the dragon and during his training, Ryu was constantly on the verge of death. Wanting to become stronger was good, of course, but he risked his life too much. She was very worried about him. What, during training? So it was this girl who lent Ryu her power back then. He looked at her, understanding everything, and promised to try to be more careful in the future. The girl was happy to hear this and smiled at him. Ryu remembered what the three-headed dragon had said. By the way, he mentioned putting a part of his soul in me. Is that right? The girl said the egg was right over there and pointed towards where the dark egg floated. He walked closer to it and began to examine it, then asked, "Is this his soul? It looks very beautiful." The shell shimmered brightly. She began to explain that the dark dragon wasn't evil initially. He was originally a golden dragon who always sought new knowledge. However, after learning forbidden magic, he transformed into the dark dragon. He was an ordinary dragon, but with a very powerful soul. They stood next to each other and Ryu replied, "I see." The girl considered him very kind, then smiled and said, "Or." Perhaps Ryu spared the dark dragon and offered friendship only because this girl was also a dragon. She looked at him, awaiting an answer to her question. Ryu turned to her and said he didn't want to just take anyone's life. That's why she liked him. The darkness he had woken up in was still all around them. Now the egg rested between the girl's hands. She said they could return to the topic. Ryu, take a closer look. Is that a little dragon inside? Indeed, a tiny dragon was restoring its body within the egg. Ryu asked if the little dragon would eventually hatch and come to life, and she confirmed it but told him not to worry as she would look after it. She apologized, saying it was time to say goodbye, but he wanted to ask another question. He asked when she would be able to leave his body. The girl was surprised by the question, standing there and looking at him with the dark dragon egg floating between her hands. She had always been alone in that space, and Ryu now felt sad realizing how lonely she must be. She smiled and said she wasn't lonely. She felt very comfortable and safe inside Ryu, finding it quite pleasant to be there, so he shouldn't worry at all. He replied, "Okay," clenched his fist, and then Ryu asked her if she would be able to leave if he became the demon lord. She got nervous and clasped her hands in front of her. The dark-haired girl replied that in that case she would, of course, leave, but she asked him not to do it. Ryu, feeling encouraged, said, "So that means..." She explained that the demon lord was a powerful monster who commanded other demons, and Ryu absolutely could not become one. She asked to end the conversation for now, but he wanted to say something else and asked her to stop. They could talk more later, she said. The girl then used magic, and a bright light shone so intensely that it blinded his eyes, making him squint. Suddenly, he opened his eyes to find people standing over him, looking very worried. Ryu was lying in bed, and everyone was relieved he was okay. His team stood by the bed while a man observed from behind. He then sat up and asked where they were. After Ryu collapsed, they met a grandma and grandpa, after which everything ended well and they returned to the castle. Everyone had been anxiously waiting for him to wake up. Ryu held his head and said it seemed he had been unconscious for a long time. He then thanked them for their concern, noting that he didn't seem to have fully recovered yet. They told him to rest and call Lur if he felt unwell, and that the others should rest too. Now alone in the room, he remained in bed, relieved that was okay. It seemed she had forcibly kicked him out of the dream. Why couldn't Ryu become the demon lord? The girl was still sitting in the same darkness where Ryu had first woken up after the battle. Indeed, if Ryu became the demon lord, would be able to leave. However, possessing such power would make him very lonely, and he would have to sacrifice all his friends. He looked very serious, lost in thought. Wondered if Ryu himself could handle such power. The town was bustling with people, drums beating, everyone celebrating the defeat of the dark dragon. They clinked their mugs and shouted, "Bottoms up." They cheered, "Glory to the Dragon Emperor, glory to Lord Ryu." The girl with the ears walked beside him, smiling, and said it seemed Ryu was very popular now. "Yep, people in town won't leave you alone now," she added. He was very excited by this fact. The emperor sat on his throne and summoned the entire team. They stood before him, and he asked to express his gratitude to them once more, stating that without them, no one could have defeated the dragon. The emperor asked what Ryu wanted as a reward for his victory, but he became shy and said it wasn't necessary. The emperor insisted he shouldn't be modest, as he couldn't simply let them leave without a reward, telling them to ask for anything they desired. Ryu pondered. Even though the man said they could ask for absolutely anything they wanted, what should he ask for? He had no ideas at all. He asked what he could request from the emperor as a reward. The man replied, anything your heart desires, for example, treasures, artifacts, or the right to live in the palace. The emperor offered various options. Tamed then apologized for interrupting, but she had an idea. Why didn't Ryu choose her as his reward? The girl raised her index finger and everyone was surprised by the offer. What? Everyone was shocked by her words. So she wanted to become Ryu's wife to marry Karen's dad? What was Grandma even saying? Surely the emperor wouldn't agree to such a thing, but the man replied that he wasn't against it, and neither was the empress. What would the young man say? Getting a dragon for a wife wouldn't be bad, right? Ryu even got nervous and didn't know what to say, starting to stammer. Then he asked why Lady Tiamat was saying such things. What had she said? The emperor didn't understand anything and asked Ryu if he didn't like that option. Then there was another option. Maybe Ryu would take Lady Tiamat's claws. The young man was flustered by such proposals, and the girl chuckled. What claws? Yes, powerful weapons and durable armor are crafted from dragon claws and scales. They could enhance Ryu's equipment for successful battles in the future. The emperor offered another idea for the hero. Perhaps Ryu wanted something else, but no, the young man decided to stick with this offer. He agreed to Lady Tiamat's claws. Then he turned to her and gave her a disapproving look. She just chuckled, seeing how embarrassed Ryu was. All right, then the emperor would prepare dragon claws as a reward. He would get everything ready now, and the young people could rest. Ryu had chosen the reward the man offered. Lur asked the young man if he was all right. He turned and looked at the girl. Ryu hadn't fully recovered yet. Maybe he should rest more. The young man said he was fine and that it was better to practice more. It seemed the dark dragon still hadn't recovered. It was good that was looking after him. The little one was still in the egg. Ryu needed to become much stronger to catch up to the heroes. The young man was asked to take a towel and some water. Ryu trained so much. Unfortunately, water and a towel were all the princess could offer. He reached for them and thanked her, then wiped the sweat from his face after his training session. What was the matter? Oh, nothing. By the way, what would Ryu do once he finally received his reward? Aoka was curious to know the answer. Ryu replied that afterward he wanted to find his friends. Why did she ask? The girl said if it was possible. Aoka stood opposite him and the others, asking the young man if she could also go with Ryu. It was an unexpected question. What? But what about the emperor? No need to worry. The man said it would be good for Aoka to see the world. If they asked together, he would definitely allow it. So, if it was possible. Ryu looked at her, then remembered that the girl had mentioned this before, saying she wanted to travel the world. The princess realizes she can't leave the country. The group agrees to travel with the princess. Ryu assures them that they will get permission to travel from the emperor. The group approaches the emperor, who rewards them with various claws. Ryu is surprised by the number of claws, to which the emperor explains that each claw has a different effect. The emperor elaborates on the claws and invites the young man to choose anyone he likes. Ryu picks a claw and the emperor notes that the young man has a keen eye. The king also clarifies whose claw the boy chose. The emperor suggests that the young man take Tiamat with him, but she declines, citing her duties. Aoka steps forward and says she wants to travel with Ryu. Aoka asks for her father's permission, and the servants begin to whisper about the dangers of the journey. The emperor insists that the girl is too young, but her grandmother defends her, asserting that the princess is already grown up. She believes they should let the princess go, but on the condition that Ryu takes responsibility for her. The princess assures them she can take care of herself, but her grandmother isn't convinced. The woman cannot let her granddaughter go until she gets Ryu's consent. The young man promises that he will help the girl if anything happens and asks for permission to travel. Ultimately, the emperor gives his consent and allows his daughter to embark on the journey. The girl is happy she'll get to see the world, but Tiamat has one more condition. She decides to go with them to prevent unwanted conflicts between countries. The princess is disheartened that she won't get the freedom she dreamed of, and the emperor asks Ryu to visit the elf village. The spirit asks the young man for help with a matter involving the kidnapping of elves. Humans are enslaving spirits and selling elves as slaves. Because of this, it's difficult for the spirit to appear in other settlements, so he asks for assistance. In the end, the group agrees to help. The emperor wishes the group good luck, and they set off on their journey. The group is getting closer to the elf village, but the tree roots are making it difficult to move forward. The princess seems tired, but Tamed urges everyone to go faster, or they'll never reach their destination. Ryu notices he's never been in this part of the forest before, and Tamed explains that spirits have created a special barrier. Guardian spirits live around the barrier and will let them in once they introduce themselves. The group encounters a spirit who shows them the way. The spirit speeds up and the group follows, moving further away from the village. Suddenly, forest monsters appear. The monsters attack some people, and the group decides to save them. The group skillfully deals with the spiders while the spirit watches them. Fortunately, the person is alive, just unconscious. A plea for help comes from an overturned carriage nearby. Inside the carriage are elves who ask for help getting out. The elves thank the group for their help, and the group explains that a spirit led them there. Meanwhile, the people who were attacked regain consciousness and, frightened, run away. Ryu notices an emblem on the people's belongings and concludes they are all from the same group. He realizes he needs to gather more information. Ryu observes that people are abducting women and children and understands he needs to deal with this quickly. The elves lead the group to their village. The elf girl is immediately greeted by her grandfather, who thanks them for saving his granddaughter. He also realizes that Ryu is their rescuer. The man introduces himself as the elder and decides to escort the group to the Spirit King. Once the group arrives at the king's presence, everyone decides to discuss strategy. The elder, however, states that he has already developed a plan. The elf suggests breaking into the homes of the nobles who bought the elves and killing all the slave traders. Ryu finds the idea too reckless. He believes they need to rethink the plan, but the elf insists they don't have time. Right now, their kin are suffering, and they can't make them wait. Ryu understands that this is very difficult for the elves, but they still need to think everything through first. Ryu suggests approaching the slave traders as a buyer to gather the necessary information. The princess mentions the money needed to buy slaves. Ryu decides to earn the required amount and asks if there are any dangerous monsters in the area. The mission to rescue the elves begins, and the group will do everything they can. Meanwhile, the spirit meets someone he's been looking for a long time and scolds him. The unknown person asks about Ryu. The unknown person turns out to be the Spirit King. He finds Ryu interesting because the young man is kind and brave despite being a mentor. The man offers the Spirit King a contract for using spirit power. He explains in more detail how spirit powers can help people. The king looks sadly at the contract and realizes that it seems he's the only one who still believes in it. Ryu finishes hunting spiders. One of the elves asks if people will really buy these spiders, to which he receives a positive answer. The elder asks for their help and says that his daughter is among those kidnapped. The elves ask the young man to make sure all the kidnapped people are brought home. The elder gives Ryu a letter from the Spirit King and asks him to deliver it to the ruler. The young man isn't sure he can meet him but promises to deliver the letter. The princess asks about the Duchy of Uruk, and the group explains it to her. Finally, the group arrives at the duchy and enters the guild. Ryu sells his loot and receives money. On his way out, Ryu meets Mac. The young man says he heard someone was selling a lot of rare materials and came to check, thinking it might be Ryu. Mac reports that the ruler has fallen ill and tells them about the contract between the ruler and the Spirit King, which no one has been able to sign yet. Mac asks Ryu what he's doing here, and the young man says he's looking for missing people. He also asks if Mac has any information. Mac says it will be difficult for the group to meet with the slave traders because they judge people by their clothes, and the group's appearance might make them seem like paupers. The group splits up. A little later, everyone notices the discomfort of their clothes. The group dressed up to look like aristocrats. Ryu went over everyone's roles, and Lur complained about being cast as a pet. Finally, the group met with the slave trader. Ryu introduced himself as a close friend of Mac, and the trader asked what kind of slave he was looking for. The man offered to show them all the slaves, and the group followed him down to the basement. The man informed them that they had demi-humans and asked who they were interested in. When the group said they needed elves, the slave trader stopped in shock. The man explained that they didn't have any elves because they were extremely valuable goods and were only sold at auction. Ryu asked where the next auction would be held, but the trader couldn't provide that information. Ryu offered a bribe, and the trader revealed the necessary details. The trader mentioned that there were many women and children among the slaves. Ryu noticed an elf, and the trader commented that the young man had a sharp eye. Ryu guessed that the girl was the elder's daughter and realized they needed to hurry. He asked why elves were so valuable, and for an additional fee, the trader explained. In the Dark Guild, it was said that every elf was followed by a spirit, which was considered a pleasant bonus. Due to the ruler's illness, everyone was eager to form contracts with spirits. Ryu thought it was absurd that people were kidnapping elves for spirits and became very angry. Ryu inquired about who was behind this, but the trader didn't have that information. The group thanked him for the details and left. Ryu declared that they would definitely save all the elves and that they needed to gather more information. They decided to change back into their own clothes. After finally changing, Ryu was about to throw away their disguises. Suddenly, someone was found inside the trash can. Ryu closed the lid back, but then a girl jumped out. She asked what he was doing, to which Ryu replied that he didn't mean to intrude on a child's home. Alice explained that she wasn't a child and it wasn't her home. She also mentioned that she was from the country of light. Alice asked Ryu for help since they were from the same city. She spoke about the slave trade and how it needed to be stopped. The girl stated that she already knew everything and could provide a lot of useful information. Ryu wonders why Alice's reconnaissance group can't handle everything themselves since that's their job. Alice explains that she already tried, but it didn't work out. She throws herself at Ryu, begging for his help, and he agrees. Fenrir reminds him that he hates monsters and asks if he's sure they're going to help. Ryu speculates that Alice is from a different squad than his and her information could be useful. Ultimately, the guys agree to help and Alice contacts her team. The girl successfully gets permission and suggests they talk in her room. Alice leads the group to her home, where they are already met by others. Burr asks what the guys know and they tell him everything. They mention the king's illness, to which Burr replies that the king isn't sick. It's more likely the king was poisoned and anyone could have done it. Burr's people infiltrated the castle and found out that Lord Lade most likely poisoned the ruler. He frequently interacts with the king's inner circle, promising them huge sums and titles. Ryu asks about the remaining close associates and suggests contacting them, but Burr says it won't work. It turns out that everyone who didn't support the minister was expelled from the castle. The princess suggests simply breaking into the castle and removing the minister. Ryu mentions that the king's direct heir can make a contract with a spirit, but it turns out he's only 5 years old and under house arrest. Burr also says that after signing the contract, the boy would most likely be eliminated. Ruka is furious and intends to tear this lord to pieces, but Ryu stops her, asking her to calm down. The princess apologizes, realizing she could have brought trouble upon the prince, and Ryu suggests they devise a plan. Ryu brings up the auction, and the guys explain why they came to the city. Burr asks if the guys know anything about the Dark Guild, but the answer is no. He says there are 3 Dark Guilds in total, and Ryu fortunately remembers the name of one of them. The squad decides to split up and find the guild. They also want to ask for the king's help, but aren't sure they'll be easily believed. Ryu suggests leaving everything to them and says he needs to deliver a letter from the Spirit King to the king. Alice is surprised and asks where Ryu got the letter, to which he replies that they received a request for help from the Spirit King. Burr decides to find out the contents of the letter and conceals it. In the letter, the Spirit King mentions that spirits and humans were meant to coexist in the same world, but instead, humans began to treat spirits with contempt. After finishing the letter, the guys realize that the Spirit King still trusts humans. They decide to deliver this letter, understanding that it will definitely make others believe them. Beer asks them to entrust the letter's delivery to them. Now the guys are confident they will save the king and deal with the Dark Guild. The guys split into teams and decide to start acting in the evening. In the evening, the men are drinking in the tavern and ask for more drinks. Meanwhile, Ryu and Alice arrive at the tavern. Ryu enjoys feeling like a spy, and Alice wonders why she's also participating in the destruction. Taking the opportunity, the young man asks if Tia really hates monsters that much, to which Alice replies that it's her job. Alice says she admires the hero and that's why she joined this squad. She also says she wants to be like the hero, and Ryu asks if she considers monsters pure evil. Alice asks if Liz and the others are monsters, which catches Ryu off guard. The young man realizes that the girl has figured it out, and Alice says that she was initially afraid of them, but then she understood that Ryu trusted them. Now the girl isn't sure if all monsters are truly bad. Ryu thinks Alice is kind, to which the girl reminds him about the operation and asks him to be serious. Alice also asks if the other teams are ready. Meanwhile, in the tavern, the men are rewarded for completing their task. The men are happy because now they can feast every night, and the client gets straight to business. Finally, the girls burst into the tavern and beat up the men. Everyone present is shocked and starts attacking. In the end, everyone is defeated, and the client tries to escape. Beer gives the guys communication artifacts, and he also informs them that they've found the locations of 2 guilds. Ryu suggests using the found guilds. Ryu suggests letting one of the guild members go, and then he will lead them to the last guild. Ryu and Alice follow the fleeing guy. The guy stops in an alley and opens a secret passage, then disappears inside. Ryu manages to hold the door and opens it. The others follow him inside. They burst into the room, startling everyone present. The people there demand to know who Ryu is, then decide to kill him. Meanwhile, the young man reports that the tavern has been invaded and asks for help, but the guild master refuses. A loud crash comes from behind the door. The guild master steps out to investigate and runs into Ryu. Ryu directly states that he came to destroy the guild, and the guild master finds his greeting rude. The guild master draws his sword and attacks Ryu. The young man demands the release of the elves and spirits, but the guild master claims he cannot do that. Ryu then decides to defeat him and release the elves and spirits himself. Ryu blocks every strike, and the guild master notes that the young man is holding his own well. Ryu tells him not to mess with him. The young man declares he will never forgive the guild master for selling elves and spirits, and tells him to go to hell. The guild master is confused, not understanding what Ryu is talking about. Ryu eventually explains that he came at the request of the elves. The guild master also states that elves cannot influence spirits and asks for them to be brought in so the group can see for themselves. The elves and spirits are calmly brought in, leaving Alice and Ryu bewildered. The elves also assure them that the guild master treats them well. The guild master explains that he never sold the elves and gave them their own choice. He also had no idea that people wanted to use them. The guild master apologizes. The guild master decides to let everyone go, but an aristocrat among the group is displeased. Ryu also spots the elder's daughter among the elves and is glad to have found her. The guild master asks how Ryu became so strong, and he replies that he simply lived in the Great Forest, which shocks everyone. The guild master and everyone else decide to go to the Great Forest, leaving the elves in Ryu's care. Ryu asks Alice to contact everyone and report everything. Beer says they successfully reached the king. He also mentions that the king is too weak and cannot read the letter from the Spirit King. Beer informs them that they have already sent someone for a healer and asks Ryu and Alice to return to them. Ryu insists they must take care of the elves, but acknowledges the king is more important. The elves understand that the group needs to leave and ask them not to worry, as they are not entirely helpless and can defend themselves. Ryu and Alice rush to the king. Alice reminds him that if the ruler dies, it will be very difficult to mend relations with the spirits. If Lade ascends the throne, he will immediately get rid of the prince and the group won't be able to stop him. However, attacking him now could lead to conflict among the aristocrats. Ryu realizes that the only way out is to heal the king and speak with the Spirit King. The group enters the castle through a secret passage. The healer reports that the situation is dire, as the poison has been in the king's body for a long time and has spread to all his organs. Unfortunately, the king cannot be saved. Ryu takes a letter from Beer, saying he must give it to the king as he promised to deliver it. The young man places the letter in the king's hands. Suddenly, the letter glows because the letters contained magical formulas. A seal also appears on the letter. Unexpectedly, the Spirit King appears. Everyone is surprised, and Ryu notices that this is the same spirit who guided them in the forest. Finally, the spirit greets the group and introduces himself as the Spirit King. The spirit is glad that the king hasn't forgotten their promise and notes that he hasn't changed at all. Ryu says he couldn't help, but the spirit disagrees. The spirit believes the young man shouldn't underestimate his achievements. He also notes that Ryu fulfilled his request despite everything. The spirit asks to be allowed to deal with the king himself. He uses sacred light, and the king's complexion visibly improves. The spirit himself collapses, but Ryu catches him in time. The spirit says he has connected with the great forest, which will help remove the poison from the king's body. Suddenly, the king opens his eyes and, seeing the spirit king, asks why he is there. The spirit explains that it seems someone tried to overthrow the king. The king, however, is saddened, believing he failed to keep his promise. The spirit is disappointed that the king would say such a thing and tells him they need to try even harder together. He suggests that everyone work together to find the culprit and punish him. Ultimately, the king steps out onto the balcony, showing everyone that he has recovered, while Lade is bewildered by how this happened. The king notes that Ryu is a strong young man, after which the spirit casts a spell for him so the king can make an announcement. The king declares that it is now forbidden to coerce or mistreat elves and spirits. Anyone who disobeys will be executed. The king asks the spirit for its opinion, saying this is their first small step, and the spirit expresses its satisfaction. This is the first step towards fulfilling their dream. All the bandits were captured and the elves returned home. The elf king thanks the group for their help. He asks what Ryu wants as a reward and offers him a contract, but the young man doesn't need anything. Ultimately, the king decides to enhance Ryu's body, which the young man agrees to, and the king touches him. Suddenly, the king sees a girl with a dragon in an egg and recoils from Ryu. The king is shocked and asks why a dark dragon is inside Ryu. The spirit finishes up, telling Ryu he can always contact him if needed. He also asks what the group plans to do next. The group discusses where to go next, while the spirit is pleased that Ryu turned out to be so kind. He also thinks it would be wonderful if Ryu became the new demon lord. Unfortunately, none of the coachmen want to travel to the dwarf kingdom because it's too far. Luca suggests flying on Grandma, but Ryu refuses. Alice suddenly appears, having thought the group had already left. They explain to her that no one wants to travel that far. The young woman also informs them that her squad has been given a new mission. The hero is looking for his friend. Ryu asks, surprised, what happened. Alice explains that the missing person's name is Ryu, and he and the hero lived in the same town and were the same age. Also, the young man should have the profession of mentor. Ryu realizes the hero is looking for him, but if they meet, it will be very bad as he is traveling with a whole group of monsters. Alice asks to join the group as the hero isn't far from here and she decided to expand the search area. The group visibly gets nervous. Tiamat finally returns with news that she found a carriage. The carriage can also take up to 10 people. In the end, Ryu agrees to take Alice but asks her not to tell the hero where they went. Tiamat leads the group to the carriage and the coachman turns out to be Mac. Ryu is surprised that Tiamat and Mac know each other and he didn't expect Mac to have a carriage. Mac says it cost him a pretty penny, but he's still happy. The group prepares to leave and Ryu promises to contact Tia when the time comes. Ryu notices that the carriage is completely empty and Mac explains that he's already sold everything. The young man is also glad he can give his friends a ride, especially since he has no money left to hire guards. Along the way, the young woman starts to feel sick, as it's their first time riding in a carriage and Ryu promises to make a stop. Finally, the carriage stopped and the girls went to explore the forest. Tiamat thanks the young man for bringing the princess along on the journey. She also mentions that dragons are masters of magic, but they lack one crucial thing: experience, which cannot be gained through ordinary training. If Ryu hadn't taken Aoko with him, she would have remained a naive child. Suddenly, the girls return looking completely startled. A man follows them, apologizing and saying he didn't mean to scare them. The man is unclothed and holding a fish. He insists that he is just an ordinary human. Ryu starts to shoo him away when Alice suddenly recognizes the guy. It turns out to be the captain of their squad. Finally dressed, Jen explains that he just decided to take a quick swim. He introduces himself to the group and Ryu introduces himself in return. Jen immediately notes that they might be looking for him and asks the young man how old he is. The captain praises the young man for his skills and asks if he can join them. Finally, the group arrived at their destination. Mac can't accompany them any further as he's heading to a different location. Jen also tells Alice that they will part ways here because he wants to chat with the locals. They are met by a merchant who has been informed to lead Ryu to the king. The king greets Ryu and asks how the young man is doing. Ryu replies that everything is fine and says he has brought something interesting. He pulls out a dragon's claw, which greatly surprises the king. The king asks whose claw it is and Tiamat says it's hers. The girl introduces herself as the Dragon Queen, further shocking the dwarves. Tiamat asks them to forge a weapon from her claw. The king decides to get to work immediately and offers the young man and his friends a place to rest in the castle. Suddenly, a guard bursts in, reporting a problem. Following the guard, a shocked girl rushes in. Ryu realizes it's Tia and asks why she's there. He sees the captain behind her and understands that he told her everything. The girl grabs her sword, demanding an explanation for why Ryu is with a group of monsters. Ryu is shocked and doesn't know what to do. He realizes that if he says the wrong thing, he'll be cut to pieces. Taiga calms Tia down, reminding her that drawing a sword in front of the king is disrespectful. He also asks Ryu to explain why he disappeared without a word. Ryu decides to tell the truth, but his friends think he's joking. Eventually, the young man tells them everything, which greatly surprises his friends. Taiga assures Tia that Ryu's friends are trustworthy. The girl looks angry, but then unexpectedly rushes to hug Ryu. She's incredibly happy that Ryu is okay, as she was beside herself with worry after he went missing. Ryu assures her that he's become stronger, but he's still far from his friend's level. Suddenly, Tia suggests Ryu return home. Ryu stops Tia, reminding her that he's traveling with his friends, to which the girl argues that he shouldn't fight because he's a mentor. In her opinion, Ryu's profession isn't suited for battles and he's just been lucky so far. Besides, Tia still doesn't trust these monsters. Ryu is clearly angry because the girl doesn't know how sad he was to be alone. He just wanted to be on par with his friends and trained for that very reason. As a result, Ryu and Tia start arguing. Tiger explains that these two have often argued since childhood but always made up immediately afterward. He believes they're just expressing their feelings this way. Tia demands that Ryu fight her and prove he's become stronger. The young man agrees, but if he wins, Tia must accept Lur and the others. Taiga asks his friends to calm down, believing they're crossing a line. The king, however, sends everyone to rest and asks them not to quarrel anymore. Already in his room, Ryu thinks everything is going very badly. Lur walks through the corridor to think everything over. She hopes that Ryu and the hero will reconcile soon. Meanwhile, Tia sits alone in her room when someone unexpectedly knocks. Lur enters the room and offers to talk. Tia thinks the girl has decided to attack her, but Lur came with a request for Tia to make up with Ryu. Tia believes they argued because of Lur. Lur, however, says that Ryu appeals to her and greatly interested her when he decided to help the monster. The girl explains that other people were just scared of her and ran away, but Ryu wasn't afraid. Tia demands that Ryu be released. Tia explains that when she was looking for Ryu, she prayed that nothing like this would happen to him. Now she can't feel relieved, even after meeting him again. Lur directly asks Tia if she's in love with Ryu. The girl gets flustered, saying they're just friends. Lur thinks she and Tia will get along and decides she can take Ryu for herself. Tia is displeased and says that as soon as she defeats Ryu, she'll deal with Lur. After that, she kicks the girl out of the room. Lur wonders what to do now, as she just wanted to reconcile the two. Suddenly, she runs into Taiga. The girl asks him to help her with something. Ryu arrives somewhere, not understanding what happened to Lur. The guy is surprised because she invited him out, saying they hadn't hung out together in a long time. Ryu waits for Lur, already thinking about what they'll do, and finally the girl arrives. To Ryu's surprise, instead of Lur, Tia shows up, clearly puzzled about what Ryu is doing there. They are both shocked and ask each other what they're doing there. It turns out Ryu was supposed to meet Lur and Tia was supposed to meet Taiga. Both get angry, realizing they've been set up. Meanwhile, Lur and Taiga observe the two, realizing they're not making any progress. Taiga thinks that pushing them together like this will only make things worse. Tia panics, not knowing what to do. Finally, she decides to speak but turns around to see Ryu leaving. The girl stops him, asking where he's going. Ryu explains that he's returning to the castle since Lur and Taiga aren't coming and there's no point in them standing there alone. Tia wants to stop Ryu but isn't sure. Lur, on the other hand, doesn't understand why the girl can't just talk to him. Ryu thinks he really overreacted and wants to apologize if Tia regrets it. The guy turns around and realizes the girl is gone. Meanwhile, Tia is attacked by a gang of guys who suggest they go for a walk together. The guys are about to drag the girl away and Taiga realizes they need to help Tia, when suddenly, someone tells the guys to stop. Ryu demands that they don't touch his childhood friend. The guys tell Ryu not to interfere and to get lost. However, Ryu holds the guy so tightly that he can't move. In the end, the other guys leave. Tia thanks him for saving her and apologizes for yesterday. She admits that she was only thinking about herself and wanted to talk to Ryu again. Ryu also says he's at fault for being rude when she was worried about him. Ryu starts laughing as it's the first time he's seen Tia so modest. The girl gets embarrassed, saying she was just meeting Ryu halfway. Tiger is happy that his friends have finally made up, but Lear wasn't expecting this outcome. Finally, the pair notices their friends and confronts them. Meanwhile, the dragon's shell inside Ryu begins to crack. Ryu suddenly starts to glow. Everyone is shocked and doesn't understand what's happening. Ryu, however, realizes that it's the magical aura of the very dragon that is being reborn.